This is Atomic Shinobi, and today I'm going to narrate third and final part of What If Kid Naruto was trained by Tobi. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no time, let's start the story.
No. We stand at a crossroad and you three are the only ones that I can trust at this point. Gaara replied as he got up. War is coming and both sides demand our aid. Baki inquired. War between whom? Uzu no Kuni, led by Yami, has already struck a blow against Konohagakure. Gaara said as he noticed that all three of them were pale. Yami has sent me word that he wants us to submit to his rule and as a show of good faith has sent valuable intelligence that may save mine and many other lives. What intel? Inquired Kankuro. Aka no Suna Sasori and the Iwa bomber Deidara are coming here to see extract Shukaku from me. A process that will kill me. Gaara responded. Kankuro frowned and said, if we know they're coming we can formulate a response. Not in the village we can't. Gaara responded, it is why I intend to lure them out into the desert where I am at my strongest and kill both of them before they can use the village against me. But that is not the only word I have received. Minato Namikaze has sent word that due to the attack by Uzu he is calling a 5-cage summit. When Tamari assembled her brother's plan, she nodded and said, lure those two rogues while you're on your way there, and kill them both then. Yes, though not alone. I plan on sending word to Tsuchikage about the Rouge Deidara and offering the man a chance to deal with him himself. Gaara gave a nod. If he agrees we will rendezvous before the meeting and kill them ourselves, ending that threat as well as dealing with two of the most dangerous rogue nin that our villages have ever had. Baki said, I see, and if he doesn't agree to help you? We deal with them ourselves. Gaara said, I will bring you Baki, and you Kankuro with me. While I am away I am leaving you in charge Tamari. Are you sure about this Gaara? Baki is a better leader than me, Tamari replied. Yes, but his skill in wind is still stronger than yours for the time being. If I am going into battle against aka no Suna Sasori I need every advantage that I can get. Gaara responded, it is nothing against you Tamari, just a tactical choice that I cannot take any chances with. Tamari nodded and said, I understand. As soon as Tamari took charge, Gaara explained, excellent. The summit is going to be in 2 weeks. That gives us 1 week to hear back from the Tsuchikage. If he agrees we will rendezvous with him in Kusa before traveling to Tetsu no Kuni. If he does not we will begin traveling on our own and hopefully lure them to us on the road when we are at our most vulnerable. He was also talking with Baki and Kankuro about how to deal with the two rogue nin and any potential issues that might come up while Tamari was in charge. The trip to the lab in the south, where Karen would be, took 3 days. On the second day, Naruto joined them, claiming to have taken care of all urgent issues for the time being and promising to expedite their journey after they had enlisted their second member because they were running out of time. As they got closer to the base, Suigetsu questioned, so who are we here to get? You keep saying she. Sasuke said, her name is Karen Uzumaki. Oh, Suigetsu sighed, that bitch. She may be difficult but please refrain from insulting my family. Naruto laughed, after all there aren't going to be many Uzumakis left after the war. If you say so. Suigetsu sighed as they got closer to the base and noticed the red-haired woman coming toward them. Half of her hari appeared to have been freshly laundered, while the other half was immaculately kept. When she saw Naruto, she hissed, you. Naruto laughed and nodded, saying, good day to you as well, cousin. I am here to keep that promise that I made you all those years ago. She yelled, Orochimaru is still alive, not for too much longer. Naruto replied, I came to recruit you. Frowning, she said, you mean Uzu is alive again? It is. I only have one last job for you. She sighed and said, there always is. Sasuke looked at him and lowered her jaw slightly, as if she was trying to form the words, we are going after my brother and Naruto agreed that you are an excellent asset to have on this mission. It's to help me. What are you going to need me for? She said. To help track him down if he moves, and for your impressive healing abilities. Sasuke said, after that it is up to Naruto what happens next. Karen glanced at Naruto, who nodded his head after sporting a sly grin. As Naruto pulled them all into the pocket dimension, she started, fine. I'll help you. But there's the matter of this facility. What the hell? She exclaimed as he made a single hand sign and explosions could be heard. I rigged the place years ago when I went to get additional treatment here from Orochimaru, back when we first met cousin, replied Naruto. You are a sneaky bastard, she shouted. Do you need to seal me? Sasuke simply turned and left, while Suigetsu simply shrugged and followed the Uchiha. Naruto said, I do. Gentlemen, if you would be so kind as to walk over that way and step down to a lower platform. Naruto placed the seal on the girl in a matter of seconds and then walked to where the two were leaning against one of the platforms. Done already? Inquired Suigetsu. Hers was basic compared to yours, replied Naruto. Now get ready to fight. The former Kiri Nin scowled and asked, why? They going to be waiting for us when we go back? You're taking us directly to our final destination, aren't you? Sasuke laughed. Naruto nodded and said, exactly. Karen, you can stay here. Why? She yelled. Naruto stated plainly, because we are going to be facing a small army of cursed seal warriors. She yelled, wait. You're going after Jugo? Naruto smiled and said, indeed. As she sat down, she sighed and said, you have a death wish. Well, pull me out of here when you're done. Pulling himself, Suigetsu, and Sasuke out of the pocket dimension to stand in front of the last lab they intended to visit, Naruto said, no worries. An alarm began to sound as they arrived, and Naruto saw the scientists rushing about, releasing the different subjects so they could be used against the intruders. No mercy? Inquired Sasuke. As he pulled out his blade, Naruto said, none? Most of them are no better than beasts. Killing them will be a mercy. Leave their corpses behind you. Suigetsu smiled as the insane fighters hurried out the doors in their direction. He charged forward, struck, and demonstrated why Nuabari was so lethal to several opponents by entangling their bodies in a massive ball of mangled flesh, rendering them immobile as they perished. The Uchiha's Sharingan was spinning wildly as he predicted each enemy before they could even react, but Sasuke was more effective as he struck, delivering his blows with surgical precision and severing major arteries and limbs with each strike. The bodies dropped rapidly, with his own Sharingan active and his blade finding heads and throats as easily as it did hearts and lungs. Naruto himself was a tornado of death. As he advanced, enemies fell in front of him, never slowing until they came to a halt. Looking back, their bodies were either lying on the ground in pools of their own blood or strung together into enormous balls, and there were no more adversaries to battle. That was fun. Suigetsu laughed. Is this going to be what it's like to work with you daily? I wouldn't say daily. Naruto laughed, but during this war one can promise a good deal of bloodshed. He chuckled as they entered the structure and began making their way through the hallways, Naruto occasionally launching a kunai down one where it discovered a scientist attempting to set off a trap. Great. A few minutes later, they came to a stop in front of a big metal door, and Naruto scowled while pressing a hand against it. Dense metal, meant to withstand any attack against it from within or outside. He smiled. We use the same metal in most blades. As he began to pull open the door, he heard Jugo's battle roar. Despite his tremendous strength, Jugo charged at the door and was soon pinned to the wall. Suigetsu whistled, whoa, when he noticed how easily Naruto was holding Jugo in place. Naruto yelled, Jugo, Kimimaro told you to stop attacking people, and Jugo stiffened before turning to face him. How do you know Kimimaro? According to Sasuke, he works for us. He yelled, no. No, he's dead. Hardly. Naruto laughed. He was a sleeper agent. I had recruited him when we were children. Orochimaru. Sama did that. No, that was a lie. Kimimaro told to make Orochimaru believe in his loyalty. Naruto responded, Kimimaro works for me and is waiting for you back in Uzu no Kuni. As he turned to face Naruto, Jugo muttered, Uzu no Kuni. You're the one, Naruto Uzumaki. The man Orochimaru fears. Naruto nodded, I am. As Suigetsu whispered, Orochimaru is afraid of him? Sasuke mumbled back, first I've heard of it, apparently. Kill me. Jugo pleaded, I don't want to hurt anyone else. With a smile and a hand on Jugo's shoulder, Naruto said, no, Jugo, we need your help. We need you to help track down a very bad man and kill him. After that, I will help you get rid of these cursed powers of yours if you so wish. You will? But Orochimaru said he couldn't. I am not Orochimaru. He only used you to further his own agenda. I intend to help you after you help us. Calmly replied Naruto. Will you aid us with your great strength? I will get to see Kimimaro again, and get the help I need after? Naruto vowed, I swear to you that you will be freed, and not through death. He nodded and said, I will help you. As he opened the pocket dimension once more and Karen fell out, Naruto responded, excellent. One moment then. Jugo gave him a startled look and said, there, now you're all here. Sasuke questioned, so we have my team, now what? Now the fun begins. Naruto responded, I managed to get the intel we need on where Itachi is heading. He is on his way to Iwagakure to kill Roshi, Jinchuruki of the Yonbi. You are in a position where you can catch them before they can get there. We're maybe a day away from the border. Karen nodded, but how will we find him? That is up to you. My part in this has ended. Calmly replied Naruto. The rest is up to you, Taka. Taka, scowled Sasuke. Every team needs a name and these three are to be your team. Even when you begin your work as my general there will be times I will need you to go on covert missions. Who better to take than these three here that are ready to help you kill your brother? Okay. Sasuke replied, so we know where he is heading, any idea if we will be stopped? Highly unlikely. Naruto replied, the Akatsuki are spread thin at the moment and I have taken steps to ensure that their teams are going to be delayed in having any chance of coming to their aid. Sasuke nodded and said, if you're sure, do you need to seal Jugo? Nodding, Naruto removed the ink and said, I do. Don't worry, Jugo. I also did this to Kimimaro. It will make sure that no one can make you betray me. The big shinobi nodded as Naruto created the complex pattern and turned it on. Okay. There. I wish you the best of luck. Once you have succeeded in ending Itachi, make your way back to Nami no Kuni. Once there I will collect you. Why there? Inquired Karen. It is already part of my empire and it is easier to give you a meeting point than just trying to track you down. Naruto said, as if it were obvious. Now I need to be off. With luck all of us will meet again back in Nami. Naruto then vanished into the pocket dimension before resurfacing in the war room of Uzushiro. Naruto nodded as he approached the map and wrote down the locations of every Akatsuki member, who was still carrying specialized seals. Making a map that would track those seals hadn't been hard. The only challenging part was ensuring he wouldn't lose them if they had to use them. Itachi and Kisame were currently just over the border into Tsuchi no Kuni, possibly a day ahead of Taka, but Naruto wasn't worried about them catching up because he was certain they would be traveling quickly. Naruto knew that Gaara wouldn't be waiting in the village after he made sure the Jinchuruki was given, even though Deidara and Sasori were in Kawa no Kuni, still a few days away from Sanagakure. Hidan and Kakuzu arrived last. In Kaminari no Kuni, they were still 5 days from the border, and Naruto was aware that if he allowed them more freedom, they might become the most dangerous. His voice was a hum, what to do with you? He was tempted to go deal with them directly, but doing so would put him in danger of dying. Hidan would be handing him over to Jashin with just one slip. Up. No, that wouldn't work for his plans at all. After giving it some more thought, Naruto smiled and glanced at his available personnel. He nodded and took the required notes before calling them to the war room using their seals. First to arrive was Haku, who emerged from a mirror wearing combat gear. She understood that if she was summoned in this manner, it meant Naruto needed her to fight and that she should be prepared for combat. Kimimaro entered next, his face expressionless, but Naruto could tell he was also excited for combat. After Kimimaro, Tayuya finally entered, carrying her new battle flute and donning light armor over her clothing. Kimimaro inquired, how may we serve you, sire? As Naruto noticed the two girls tense, he said, I have a task for you three, one that is going to be dangerous and may get one or all of you killed if you are not careful. I am sending you three to combat and take down a two-man team from the Akatsuki. Akatsuki, are you insane, you fucking bastard? Those fucktards are S-fucking rank, Tayuya yelled. I know the risks. However, with the coming war one cannot enter the field just yet, and if we allow those two to get into Kaminari no Kuni they will kill one of their Jinchuruki and take it for themselves. That is something we cannot allow the Akatsuki to do. That is why I am sending you three to handle them, Naruto said quietly. Haku inquired, who are the targets? The first, Kakuzu. He is the user of a dangerous kenjutsu that allows him to rip the hearts of his enemies out and use them to increase his own lifespan. He himself is capable of using Doden and Sweden techniques, but on his back are 4 masks that each contain a heart that must be destroyed before you can kill him once and for all. Each mask is a different element, those being Kaden, Futon, Sweden, and Raiden. Take out these 5 hearts and he will die. Naruto clarified. And the other? The other is known as Hidan. His combat abilities aren't as impressive as other members of the Akatsuki, however the fact is that he cannot be killed, and if he ingests any of your blood and completes his ritual he will make sure that any damage done to him is inflicted upon you instead. Your best bet is to seal him away somehow. Chop him into pieces and drop him into the ocean for all I care, but he must be stopped. He has no ninjutsu or genjutsu abilities so that will work to your advantage, and his weapons are a black spike, about 4 feet in length, as well as a 3-bladed scythe. Disarm him and you will have an easier fight on your hands. Naruto went on. Kimimaro questioned, they must be killed then? Anyway that you can manage it, yes. Naruto gave a wink. I know that I am asking a lot of you three, but I have faith in your abilities that you will be able to kill Kakuzu and neutralize Hidan. This needs to be done for the plan to succeed. Huffing, Tayuya said, got it you bastard. Kimimaro bowed, understood Naruto. Sama. Haku nodded, saying, it will be done. As he led them to their current location, Naruto said, good. This is where they are currently located. Travel into Kaminari no Kuni and stop them at the border. This must be kept out of Kaminari no Kuni, no exceptions to this. As they walked away, the three nodded, and Naruto grinned while he gazed at the map. It was now a tactical risk for him to attack the Akatsuki. It would be hard to get one back later if he let them have even one of the Biju. He didn't particularly enjoy defying his old teachers in this way, but they stood in his way, and he wasn't going to let that stop him now. As he put away the little telescope he was using, Sasuke scowled. Two men in black coats with red clouds on them passed by them as they stood on a ridge with a view of a valley. He benefited from the fact that they were strolling and not in any apparent rush, but Naruto had instilled in him the value of carefully selecting his battlefield at a young age. With a whisper, Karen inquired, "What's the plan?" "We need to separate them," Sasuke said. "If I go down there and challenge Itachi, he would likely agree to a duel with me, but I don't trust Kisame to not interfere." Suigetsu nodded and said, "So you need us to keep him occupied?" "Exactly. How dangerous is that sword of Kisami's?" "Extremely. It's the only one with any type of sentience among them, and it has a symbiotic relationship with its owner. It can fuse with the wielder and heal their wounds and even turn them into a shark if it fully fuses." Suigetsu continued, "Beyond that, it's Kisame Hoshigaki that makes it so dangerous. He has monstrous levels of chakra, and that's what lets him use Samahata with such ease." "Can you and Jugo take him?" Suigetsu acknowledged. "Maybe. Depends on how serious he takes us. So when do we strike?" she asked. "In a bit. There's going to be an opening in the valley that leads to a rocky field. That should give you a small advantage against Kisame since he won't have any water to work with and will have to use more chakra to make his own. You two keep him occupied. Karen, I want you on standby to heal them as needed. Do not engage them yourself." Karen muttered, "I didn't plan on it. That would just get me killed." "Jugo, keep it together. Remember that the sooner we do this, the sooner you can be with Kimimaro again." Jugo nodded and said, "Yeah, I'll do it, for Kimimaro and you." Sasuke sighed as he considered every scenario that might go wrong with this attack, but he ultimately realized that this was the crucial moment. He was going to succeed because he had worked hard for years to get here. He intended to kill Itachi and exact revenge on his family. They cautiously descended the ridge again and walked ahead of the two Akatsuki members, reaching the rocky field before them and forming a position opposite them as they approached. The shorter man paused and stared at Sasuke as he said, "Itachi, it's been a long time. I've grown stronger since you last saw me. I'm going to kill you today and avenge the family that you murdered." "Is that right? Did you get the same eyes as I have then?" asked the man. "I don't need them. I'll beat you my way," Sasuke yelled. "You wanted me to get strong and come fight you, and I have come." Itachi nodded and shifted to the side, with Sasuke following him. "Very well then, little brother." Before Kisame could attempt to follow him, Suigetsu stepped in front of him and smiled at the more experienced swordsman. "You ain't going anywhere either. We got some unfinished business," he laughed. Jugo moved to his opposite side, the curse seal moving over his arm, and Kisame just laughed as he grabbed his sword and brought it down, facing the younger teen. He questioned, "You really think you can beat me?" Suigetsu yelled, "Only one way to find out," and rushed at the man. After assembling his equipment, Gaara let out a sigh. Gaara had to rely on the assumption that the man would not be present to assist them in the fight against the two Akatsuki members because the Tsuchikage had never replied to their request. As a result, he would have to entice them into the desert before allowing them to attack, and he would have to hope that Baki and Kankuro could battle Sasori while he dealt with Deidara. Kankuro said, "Ready?" as Gaara left the room. "Yes, you?" "To face the founder of the Puppet Corps. No one is ever ready for that kind of challenge." Kankuro darkly chuckled, "But Baki Sensei and I should be able to keep him off your back while you turn Deidara into paste." Gaara sighed, "Let us hope so." The only things they had left were surprise and preparation, and they had reviewed the plan numerous times, trying to think of any factors that might help or hurt them. If the two Akatsuki members were unaware that they were anticipated, they probably would have approached the situation carelessly at first. Their only advantage over the two would be that, along with the preparations they had each made. In Sanagakure, Sasori was a living legend. Gaara was aware that he was directly responsible for the Sandaime Kazukage's murder, so he wasn't so conceited as to believe that he would have an advantage over the more experienced shinobi if he could defeat him. In contrast, Deidara was younger than Baki and Sasori, so he probably wouldn't have as much combat experience as Sasori, but his long-range explosives allowed him total command of a battlefield. That was the reason Gaara had taken the time to get ready. If all went according to plan, he should be able to kill Deidara fast enough and, if Baki and Kankuro could resist him long enough, help them kill Sasori. On their way to the gates, Gaara and Kankuro encountered Baki, who was waiting with his own pack, and Tamari, who was there to bid them farewell. She gave Gaara a hug and said, "Be safe." As he turned, Gaara said, "I will. Keep the village safe while I am away. Let's go." The two elder nin nodded as they followed their leader into the desert and headed in Tetsu no Kuni's direction, anticipating an ambush at any moment. Before Gaara noticed two cloaked figures waiting for them over the next dune, they were moving at a respectable pace. From his crouch on the dune, Deidara yelled, taking a rather roundabout way to Tetsu no Kuni. "Huh? It would make someone think that you were expecting us." Baki called out, pretending to be uninformed, "Who are you?" "That is rather pathetic, Baki-san." Sasori laughed. "Taking a route so far away from any potential bystanders, it is obvious that we were expected. The only real question is how you found out." "The charade is up then," Gaara said as he gazed at the two people. "We received a warning that you were coming. I trusted the source enough to take steps to hopefully avoid you, or if nothing else face you where there would be no innocent bystanders." Deidara frowned and said, "That right, and who was this fucker?" "That is not anything you need to worry about," Gaara responded. "Now do you intend to attack us or will you allow us to pass quietly?" "Sorry, but that isn't an option, Kazekage Sama." Sasori laughed. "You see, we have our orders to capture you." Gaara nodded and said, "I see. Then there is no other choice." As he made a hand signal, several clay spiders appeared beneath a thin layer of sand. "No, there isn't," Deidara laughed while standing. "You know what they say, art is an explosion." The clay spiders that surrounded the three exploded in a blast, and Deidara chuckled at how simple the trap they had set was. Sasori scowled as he gazed at the dust cloud, saying, "This was too easy." As a tiny canister blasted toward them, Deidara scowled and said, "What are you talking about?" They had to jump away as purple smoke billowed from the cloud. What the hell? They discovered that it had never been Gaara and his group as the smoke and dust had subsided. Instead, three puppets, a crow, Black Ant, and Salamandera, were now standing there, with Crow hurling a barrage of senbon needles in their direction. Clever. Deidara made a big clay bird to block the attack, and Sasori laughed as his tail appeared to block it. From behind Sasori, Baki said, "That's not the half of it." The nin blinked in surprise as he felt the wind blade cutting through the tail. With a big hand of it attempting to grab Deidara, who had the clay bird explode to send the sand flying away as more of it moved to attack him, Gaara said, "We were not so foolish as to underestimate you." As he leapt onto another bird he had constructed and launched into the air, Deidara yelled, "You think these cheap tricks will be enough to beat us? Because I'm going to bomb you to hell, you arrogant bastard." As he came out of the destroyed giant puppet and opened his Sandame Kazekage puppet, Sasori urged him to remain composed. "The moment you fly into a rage, the Kazekage will trap you and then you will be dead and I will have to find another partner, again." Only a day away from Kaminari no Kuni, Kakuzu and Hidan were strolling through a small wood when he suddenly froze. He knew something was amiss in this forest, and his instincts were alert. "What the fuck, Kakuzu? Let's move it, you lazy bastard," Hidan yelled as he continued to move and set off the trap. Bones rose up from the earth, piercing the priest of Jashin and immobilizing him in the process. As he emerged from one of the bone spikes, Kimimaro remarked, "You have good instincts. Most would have fallen when I used my Suwarabi no Mai, dance of the seedling fern. You don't live as long as I have without good instincts, unlike my partner over there." Kakuzu laughed when he saw him. "You're one of Orochimaru's underlings. So he finally raises his hand against us?" Pulling out a bone sword, Kimimaro said, "No, I do not serve Orochimaru anymore. My true master has ordered your death and I will not disappoint him." As he assumed a fighting stance, Kakuzu remarked, "Hey, I ain't easy prey, kid, and neither is my partner." In order to swing his scythe at Kimimaro, Hidan had to pull himself sufficiently away from the bones. He blinked in disbelief as an ice mirror blocked the blow and an ice blade screamed and stabbed him in the throat, pinning him to a tree as it pulled him along with it and ripping open more wounds. As she stood on a tree branch and emerged from another mirror, Haku remarked, "You thought he came alone. Our master has given his orders and we will carry them out, or die trying." As he faded from view and attempted to strike Kimimaro for the first time, but lost his balance and fell to the ground, Kakuzu remarked, "I guess it's death then." As soon as he had fallen, one of Tayuya's Doki summons materialized in front of him and swung its club at the man, sending him flying backwards and smashing him in the face. Kimimaro then raised an arm and threw his bones at Kakuzu, causing them to smash into his chest and pierce his heart. Kimimaro approached the man and said, "One down, 4 to go." When the eagerly anticipated duel between Sasuke and Itachi finally started, his Chikuto flashed. Sasuke's blade attempted to pierce Itachi's flesh, but Itachi deflected each blow with his two kunai, keeping his younger brother on his toes as they maneuvered around one another in an attempt to gain the upper hand. The two had now moved away from the others and were fighting without hesitation. As he used his two kunai to hold Sasuke's Chikudo in a deadlock, Itachi remarked, "You've been well trained in the use of that blade." Sasuke grinned as his foot flew out and caught Itachi in the knee, causing him to fall slightly and giving Sasuke the leverage to gain the upper hand until Itachi twisted the kunai and forced the Chikudo to slash into the ground instead, while Itachi punched Sasuke in the side, pushing him back a step. "I know. And I still can't compare to him." As the younger Uchiha began flashing through hand signs to create his Chidori, Itachi said, "Orochimaru was it? I seem to recall he was average in Kenjutsu." He then sent the kunai flying at Sasuke, who touched the bandages around his wrists and sent two shuriken flying into the kunai. As he charged forward, smirking, Sasuke said, "No, I chose a third path." He grabbed his Chikudo and let the Chidori run down the blade before swinging it at Itachi, who let the blade strike before vanishing into a crowd of crows. As Itachi emerged behind Sasuke, a kunai advancing to stab him in the back, he questioned, "Is that right, little brother? And what was this third choice that had you abandon Konohagakure?" Using the momentum from his first slash, Sasuke continued to move and avoid the stab as he began one-handed hand signs, not panicking. Kaden. Gokakyu no Jutsu, great fireball technique, to seek power from someone that wasn't going to use me as meat puppet later. Sasuke smiled as he hurled the massive fireball at Itachi, who vanished once more before resurfacing above Sasuke. Itachi shot the dozen fireballs at Sasuke, who jumped back as he sheathed his blade and began a new series of hand signs. "Kaden. Hosenka no Jutsu," Itachi retorted. Sasuke responded, "Kaden. Hosenka Sumabeni, Phoenix Sageflower Nail Crimson." He withdrew dozens of shuriken from the seals on his wrists and launched them in Itachi's direction, wrapped in fire and traveling quickly enough to deal a significant amount of damage if they struck. As he stabbed Sasuke, Itachi asked from behind, "Where are you aiming, little brother?" Sasuke laughed and asked, "Where are you?" Itachi blinked when he realized it was a rock he had attempted to stab. Sasuke smirked at his older brother, who also had a strange expression on his face, as the two ended the genjutsu with a burst of chakra and revealed that they were still standing where they had been at the beginning of the match. Itachi smirked as he seemed to be getting serious and said, "You have grown stronger, Sasuke. Strong enough where I will now take what I need from you." Sasuke scowled and asked, "What are you talking about?" "The reason I wanted you to gain the same eyes as I did. Once you unlock the Mangekyo Sharingan, you slowly lose the light in your eyes. In order to stop this, you need to take the eyes of a compatible match. A sibling, a parent, or even a close blood relative. That is what you are, Sasuke, my spare set of eyes." Itachi chuckled as his Sharingan began to spin more rapidly. "I will end this now." Sasuke glared and said, "No, you won't. I've come too far to lose to you now, Itachi." Kisame was grinning as he had Samahata block Suigetsu's blade once more across the rocky field. Suigetsu was too wary to allow the big shredding sword to approach him too closely, and Kisame knew Nuabari too well to be taken by surprise by its lethal qualities. As Suigetsu twisted back, he smiled and turned into a puddle of water. He then fell to the ground as Jugo charged over him. His right arm completely changed as he smashed it into the slightly unbalanced Kisame, sending him flying backwards as Suigetsu reformed and gained the brief advantage. Kisame laughed as he straightened up and swung Samahata down to block the slash Suigetsu had attempted, saying, "That's an interesting trick you learned, Suigetsu." Suigetsu acknowledged that it has its drawbacks. He allowed Samahata to block his slash as he leapt over the blades and kicked Kisame, who took the blow without moving an inch, but it briefly distracted him as Jugo rushed him from the side and smashed into his sword arm, almost severing it. However, this had the intended effect because Kisame lost feeling in his arm at that point, forcing him to drop Samahata. Kisame blinked in surprise. Then his smile turned to a growl as he grabbed Suigetsu by the throat with his free hand and slammed him into the now moving Jugo, tearing Nuabari from his hands in the process and noticing that Suigetsu had also grabbed Samahata. As he swung the longsword in tiny circles, he growled, "You think that Samahata will obey you?" Suigetsu laughed as he held the sword and observed that the blade was not happy with this alliance but appeared to understand in his mind that it was only going to last until someone as strong as Kisame could be located. One way to find out. Along with it comes the prospect of conflict and an abundance of chakra to consume. This appeased the broadsword, and Suigetsu saw that the shark-faced man realized how dangerous he was now as he leveled it against Kisame. Or so they believed. The sword's wrapping was torn before Suigetsu realized what was happening, and to their surprise, another Kisame appeared from the sword's mouth. He picked up the sword and swung it at Suigetsu, who blinked in surprise as he fell back and began to cough up blood as he went down. Suigetsu gasped. How? As the blood stopped flowing from the missing arm, the Kisame said, "That's not something you need to know." As Jugo appeared to be under control enough to recognize that they were in serious trouble, Kisame nodded while holding Samahata and said, "You did pretty damn good. Didn't expect you to make me reveal myself, but since the copy only had a fraction of my total strength, it isn't too surprising. Good to know that you revealed yourself." A voice came from behind the two Kisames. "It would have been much more difficult if I had to force Samahata to force you out of your hiding place. I seem to recall that it never liked me much after what Orochimaru did." Samahata turned, and Kisami's eyes widened when he saw Naruto standing there with a smile on his face and aka Rippa balanced on his shoulder. The person who was holding Nuabari snarled, "This was a setup." "Of course it was, you pathetic copy." Naruto laughed. "I knew that no matter how skilled those two were, they never stood a chance against you, but I trusted their skills enough to survive and force you out of hiding, and they did a remarkable job at that. Congratulations, Suigetsu, you have earned the right to lead my new 7. Suigetsu smirked and gurgled, "Fuck you." While the two Kisames smiled at one another and got ready to battle their former student, Naruto calmly said, "Karen, heal him. I'll handle this personally." Because Gaara's sand reacted much faster than the Iwa bomber had anticipated, blocking and crushing the various bombs he sent towards him, the battle in the desert heated up quickly. Gaara was wise enough to not rely solely on his defensive shield to protect him from the attacks, pushing the blonde bomber back whenever possible, but he always stayed just out of reach of his sand, which was concerning. Gaara could launch a huge wall of sand at the man, but if it wasn't executed flawlessly, it would only be deflected, giving Deidara a chance to begin controlling more sand during the brief pause, a risk he wasn't willing to take without careful preparation. As he threw more of his bombs at the Kazekage, who smashed them away with a quick burst of sand, Deidara grumbled, "You are more annoying than I thought you would be." He continued to move, never letting himself stand still for too long, which might have given Deidara an opportunity to plant explosives underneath him. "I took the time to study you." Gaara responded with composure, "Your techniques, your capabilities and your preferred tactics. A battle does not simply begin with the first attack, it begins with knowing your enemy. So tell me, what do you know of me?" "That you're a Jinchuruki of the Ichibi Shukaku, a cage, and your control of sand is the best that your village has ever seen. And that you were renowned as a murderous bastard as a kid." As he fired a few quick bursts of sand to keep the bomber in the air, Gaara laughed and said, "That is where you are wrong. I am much more than you know." "What was that?" Deidara scowled as he witnessed the red-haired Kazekage make a fist and Gaara's stoic face break into a tiny smile. Sand erupted from beneath the bomber as soon as he made that fist, rising more quickly and with a circumference that was too big for Deidara to fly out of with his clay bird. With intense concentration, Gaara clenched his second hand into a fist and tried to kill the traitor as the sand rose up like a waterfall in reverse. Gaara closed his fist and saw that Deidara had little self-defense because he had jumped up and used the bird he was riding on to blast his own out, falling to the ground in a smoldering cloud as he created a dragon with wings to carry him. "Congratulations, Kazekage, you made me use my C2 dragon. Not many people can say they've gotten to see this masterpiece." Deidara chuckled. "Your manipulation of sand is much more artistic than I thought it would be." As he continued to move, albeit more slowly now, Gaara acknowledged with a nod of respect to the man for avoiding the trap. "I realized after my defeat to Yami in the Chunin exam all those years ago that I was looking at my abilities all wrong." Deidara asked with genuine interest, "Oh? What did the kid tell you then? I'm curious about this." Despite their brief encounter, he acknowledged the child's skill in Fuinjutsu and concurred that it was a style of art that could be applied to all kinds of art, thus making the young Namikaze a younger peer. "He told me that the moment I made these powers my own instead of Shukaku's I would be much stronger. I realized that I was focusing on what Shukaku could do and not on what I could do myself. So I trained hard until I learned that my power is different from what Shukaku does. There are similarities but they are not the same. This new power of mine is all me." Gaara claimed that he touched a tiny seal on the side of his gourd and noticed that it was coated with dark iron sand as well. "I studied my predecessors, my father and the Sandame. I learned how they handled this power and realized that it was an act of will and chakra, not so different from our puppet core." "Ah." Deidara replied, "Not a bad comparison. Sasori no Dana would appreciate that kind of conversation a lot more. Pity we have to kill you." As the two sands continued to emerge from the seal and the various shades began to swirl around him, Gaara put his stoic face back in place and warned, "I won't be easy prey." Deidara laughed and said, "I know, but I won't go down easily either." An older voice exclaimed, "Then I suppose it's a good thing that I am here," as Deidara's eyes grew wide as he noticed the pyramid beginning to take shape around the C2 dragon. When Deidara landed on the ground after leaping off the dragon, he rolled and saw that the dragon had been destroyed. When the older man came down, Deidara yelled, "Onoki, you old bastard, you ruined my art. And you ruined a good chunk of the village with your bomb when you last visited." Onoki responded with a scowl. "This is the beginning of your punishment, my rebellious student." Gaara gave the older man a nod and said, "Tsuchikage, dono." Onoki nodded in response, saying, "Kazekage, you were too hasty." Gaara calmly retorted, "I never received your reply. I assumed the worst." Onoki answered, "Didn't want it to be intercepted. Or you were watching the battle the entire time and waiting for the right moment to intervene." Gaara replied with a slight smirk. "My father did not have a high opinion of you. Do not worry about your subordinates, my 2 grandchildren will assist them there." Onoki sighed in response, turning to face Deidara. HMPH, petulant brat. As he looked over and saw that they had indeed come and were now assisting in turning the tide against the puppet, Gaara said, "I thank you." From what Gaara could see, the battle had been a standoff, with Baki's futon techniques and Konkuro's puppets checking the counter while the poisoned iron sand kept them at bay. It appeared that the tide was turning in their favor now that the number had doubled on both battlefields. Deidara smiled as he launched his counterattack, saying, "Well, this ought to be fun. I'll get to really show you that art is an explosion." Kakuzu was gradually growing irritated with the battle he was locked in, and worse, he was unable to strike out in a more destructive manner because the third party was still hidden away and the 3 summons were making it difficult for him to balance with Kimimoro's help. When Kimimaro swung the short sword at the man and saw his skin harden to block the blade, he said, "Accept you death with some dignity, Kakuzu." As he kicked the teenager in the chest and rolled past the first Doki attempting to crush him, Kakuzu laughed and said, "Like hell. I've been at this game too long to die now." At that moment, he heard a flute being played, and as the second and third Doki seized his arms and held him as firmly as they could, he felt his balance faltering once more. As his curse seal reached stage 1, Kimimaro made his bones even harder than steel in preparation for destroying Kakuzu's head. "I see. Then I shall have to make this quick then." "So do I?" Kakuzu laughed as 3 masks with black wire bodies emerged from his back. "You only destroyed my water heart, kid. My own heart is still fine, and these 3 will help me remove your hiding genjutsu using friend." Kimimaro smirked as he made a hand gesture, and Kakuzu noticed that his bones had moved to cover his ears. "Is that so?" he asked. After that, Kakuzu fell to his knees as his entire world began to spin so that he was unable to tell which way was up or down. However, this had no effect on his 3 masks, which charged in the direction of the sound before being stopped by the 3 Doki. Haku was busy battling Hidan across the forest. Hidan demonstrated that his scythe was sharper than most by making tiny cuts into her mirrors. Haku quickly realized that this man might actually have some sort of entity on his side because his skills were dangerous but lethal if he managed to hit her, which is precisely why she had been selected to fight him. Hidan yelled, "Hold still you fucking bitch," as his scythe missed once more and another senbon dug into his body, this time in his upper arm, narrowly missing the pressure point that would render his right arm useless. Haku said, "Know my orders are your death and I will not be denied." Micaiah Haya Shah. Demonic Ice Mirrors. The priest of Jashin was surrounded by 20.1 mirrors, and the man blinked as he watched Haku enter her mirror and appear in each one simultaneously. Hidan blinked in disbelief as he turned and swatted away another tiny wave of senbon needles after swinging his scythe at a mirror and being hit by them. "Neat trick, but it won't work. This is no mere trick." Haku quietly added, "For the longest time this was my ultimate technique, designed to kill my enemies in an inescapable prison. You will die before these mirrors." With that roar, he yanked off the pendant and a dark miasma wrapped around him until it dissipated and revealed a figure that was similar to Hidan but not him at the same time. "Die. Hee 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 hee." Hidan laughed as he dropped the scythe and touched the pendant with the symbol of Jashin on it. "I can't die until I have given Jashin Sama as many souls as he desires. You won't stop me, bitch. You'll just be another offering to Jashin." His eyes were completely black now, and his hair was blood red. The only changes to his body were that his muscles were now more defined and that Haku could feel the chakra gushing from his scythe, which now had only one blade. With a voice that echoed as if 2 voices were speaking simultaneously, he declared, "This is the end. Your soul will be devoured and you will praise Jashin Sama in your next life, you miserable wretch." Across the rocky field, the sound of blades colliding could be heard as Sasuke's Chikuto effortlessly collided with Itachi's kunai knives. The two of them moved with the lethal grace that only their Sharingans would permit them to do so, both of them seeing the move the other was about to make and the ideal counter to it. Naruto had explained Itachi's abilities in great detail, and Sasuke was waiting for the right opportunity to attack his brother. Itachi, in contrast to most Uchiha, favored using a genjutsu to incapacitate his opponent before advancing for the kill with minimal energy expenditure. The issue with his plan was that he had to get his hands dirty in order to confront someone who could counter his genjutsu, and then he had to force him to reveal his Mangekyo Sharingan. The real battle would then start since Sasuke needed to be able to counter each of his brother's trump cards in that form. He was sure he could defeat two of them, but it would all depend on who could force the other to reveal their best move first. Sasuke's foot leapt out in a swift kick as he ducked beneath a slash, striking Itachi's stomach and knocking him back a step. Itachi was able to react quickly enough to send a kunai flying in Sasuke's direction. Sasuke grabbed the weapon with his free hand and quickly sent it flying back towards Itachi, who followed it. Itachi felt himself being pushed back as Sasuke began using his Chidori along the Chikudo to push Itachi back more and more, but Itachi just caught the weapon again and blocked the slash that Sasuke attempted. The only warning Sasuke had was a flicker of black fire as the fire approached him. "Enough games, little brother," Itachi said, his eyes changing into their Mangekyo Sharingan. "I will be taking those eyes of yours." Sasuke disappeared from view and started to circle Itachi, barely avoiding the fire as he approached slowly. Then, he leapt high enough into the air to dodge it while flashing hand signals. When Itachi realized he was imprisoned inside his own Amatsuru, Sasuke yelled, "Kaden! Garia! Ka no Jutsu, Great Dragon Fire Technique!" and sent the enormous dragon-shaped fire flying in his direction. He revealed his ultimate trump card with a slight smirk on his face as the fire obscured Sasuke's view. When he saw the black flames begin to fade and a purple humanoid figure, several stories tall, emerged from within them with Itachi standing in the middle, Sasuke landed on the ground in a roll not far from the flames. One of the enormous fists swung down towards the younger Uchiha, and Itachi said, "Well played, little brother. However, you will not stop my Susanoo." Sasuke started the second part of his plan by leaping backwards. This was going to be a dangerous part because if he did it correctly, he could completely destroy Itachi's ultimate technique. However, if he made even the slightest mistake, it would either kill him or leave him totally exposed. Swiftly, Sasuke resumed his hand signals and launched an increasing number of Garia Ka no Jutsu into the air, only to have them miss Susanoo's head. Sasuke had a savage grin on his face after the clouds had formed, even though it had taken him a few moments and a lot of evasion to get everything in place. As he watched the lightning flicker in the clouds, Sasuke exclaimed, "Today I avenge our family. Kirin. This is the end, Itachi." With that roar, he completed guiding the lightning with his chakra. Before Itachi could react or move, a great blast struck with a thunderous detonation, sending Sasuke flying back a few feet and creating a huge dust cloud. Since neither he nor Naruto had been certain that the Kirin alone would be sufficient to eliminate Itachi, Sasuke was already getting ready to begin using his cursed seal to supplement any secondary attacks that might be required. It might not complete the task, but they had both agreed that it would break him. Sasuke noticed that Itachi was still alive after the dust had settled, but he was on one knee and appeared to be struggling to stay upright. Sasuke picked up his Chikudo and approached his brother, alert for any indications of a trap. He stopped in front of him, who was staring up at him with his Sharingan deactivated and blood-stained and tired eyes. Itachi managed to stand, albeit swaying slightly, and remarked, "Impressive indeed, little brother. You created a truly fearsome technique." As he got ready to attack, Sasuke uttered, "All to kill you." Itachi nodded and held up his hand, saying, "Yes. You have succeeded in that front. I can already feel it." The younger Uchiha was about to strike Sasuke when he noticed blood dripping from the corners of his mouth. Sasuke was perplexed by what transpired next as Itachi, just like he had done when he was a child, poked him in the forehead with his index and middle fingers before he collapsed to the ground, his eyes slowly closing. Because Itachi's most recent behavior had been more consistent with the brother he remembered as a child rather than the monster they had been hunting for so long, Sasuke stood over his brother, not sure how to feel at the moment. Sasuke struggled to determine which of them was his real brother and which had been the fake. Sasuke sat on the ground and gazed up at the clear sky, trying to make sense of his feelings of confusion. While the real Kisame attempted to slam the chakra-eating sword into him, Naruto turned and avoided Samahada, grinning as his blade flashed up to block the fake Kisame's sword. Naruto twisted sideways and grabbed the fake Kisame's arm. With a savage grin that was now separating his face, he tore the arm off and threw it behind him before raising his sword to cut off the fake's head. Naruto's entire duel had been a multitasking exercise as he watched Sasuke's fight with Itachi while bouncing from enemy to enemy. It was time to kill Kisame and head out now that he was positive Itachi was dead. Naruto stepped aside and confronted the actual Kisame, who was frowning. Kisame snarled, "Should have killed you years ago. You should have. Tobi should have left me in Konoha as well. But you left me alone too long and Tobi was foolish enough to make me what I am today." Naruto laughed. "Now though Kisame Sensei, I will kill you as well and ensure that my plans continue on." As Samahata began to fuse with him, Kisame laughed and said, "Like hell Gaki. I've been at this too long to just up and quit now. You may have dealt us some serious wounds but I will make sure that you aren't around to enjoy it." As he was making hand signs for a jutsu, a giant wave of water surged out in all directions, spreading and growing until it formed a massive half-sphere around him and Naruto, with the rest of Sasuke's team just outside the sphere. Kisame proceeded to the next phase of his technique as the sphere was forming, finishing the Suira Samiodori no Jutsu, water prison shark dance technique, and completely merging with Samahata to transform into a humanoid shark hybrid. Naruto shocked the missing nin by stating, "Impressive as ever, Kisame. Sensei." He added, "But I have had years now to practice with the eye I took from Tobi. This technique may give you an advantage in terrain but I am no mere shinobi for you to drown or drain of chakra." Kisame merely growled as he hurried to Naruto, who allowed the shark to pass through him as if he were a figment of his imagination. Then, he turned and swung his blade downward, allowing AKA to bite into Kisame's tail with his Rippa. The missing nin swam in a circle around Naruto, snarling and warning him against attacking him, but he had no choice. At this point, running was out of the question, and if he truly had Tobi's eye, he knew that running would only result in his death. The same concept applied to fighting him, though, as he had more chakra than the majority of the Akatsuki combined, so he could use that eye to breathe, fight him whenever he wanted, and simply run out of time. In all honesty, he was aware that Samahata had not accompanied him because his chakra tasted poisonous to the sword. After taking a moment to gather his thoughts, he saw that Naruto's strategy had one weakness. If he wanted to counterattack, he would need to make a part of himself tangible for a short while. If he timed his moment perfectly, that would be all he needed. With a snarl, Sweden, Senshokuka, 1,000 feeding sharks, Kisame unleashed his one chance to finish off the blonde in front of him while flashing through the required hand signals. Naruto blinked in mild surprise at the strategy and had to give Kisame credit for considering it. It was true that if he wanted to kill Kisame quickly, this was the only way to stop him. He did not, however, anticipate Naruto's own guile. When the group of sharks got close enough, a distortion appeared in front of the blonde, which began drawing the sharks in before they could approach him. A smile spread across his lips as the sharks approached. After a short while, the swarm of sharks had vanished, and Kisame realized that Naruto had killed them by trapping them in a pocket dimension devoid of water. "A valiant effort, but you underestimate me, Kisame. Sensei." Naruto responded, "Shall we end this farce?" Returning to his normal self, Kisame held Samahata ready and snarled as he spread the water around them. He hurried over to the blonde, determined to use his own superior strength to break up the fight, and said, "Enough games then Gaki." Since Naruto joined the Akatsuki, the two had been engaged in this battle, which was a contest between speed and power that had never been truly resolved. There were some extremely vicious fights between them because they were both skilled swordsmen and would stop at nothing to win. Kisame used his wider blade to block Naruto's sword's rapid slashing motions as he stepped forward, then Naruto stepped low and crunched a kick into Kisame's ankle. As Kisame swung his blade down in a powerful slash that forced Naruto to the side where he continued his strikes, pushing Naruto back repeatedly while the blonde was focused on the constantly shifting gap, he didn't blink because he was already partially fused with Samahata to heal the damage. It took skill and practice to identify the real one and the fake one that Kisame left to trap attacking enemies, but Naruto knew Kisame just as well as Kisame knew him, so once he discovered that gap, the battle would change. Naruto retreated a step, nearly tripped after his foot struck a raised rock, and Kisame took advantage. Now, as Naruto swung the blade at his exposed side, forcing Samahata to stand up and attempt to defend its partner, he was ready to crush Naruto, who had rolled to the side. However, he found his opening, turned, and slammed the hilt of aka Rippa into Kisame's side, knocking him back a step. Naruto moved closer as the blade deflected the blow, using his diminutive size to deliver a forceful punch to Kisame's ribs, which cracked under the impact and sent him back a step, causing his body to heal once more. "You think you can keep this up?" Kisame growled. "You can hit me all you want but I won't go down that easily." "Maybe," Naruto replied as he maintained a level blade. But we both know that there is a limit to what Samahata will be able to heal. Once you run out of steam, the damage will start to pile up. All I have to do is outlast you. As he hurried Naruto and swung Samahata hard enough to send him flying backwards into one of the larger boulders, Kisame snorted, "That what you think? Hey. What about your wounds then? I know you can heal pretty fast, but what about when the damage starts to be too much for you?" Kisame asked. As he pulled himself out of the tiny crater and felt his body beginning the healing process, Naruto said with all the confidence in the world, "It won't get that far. After all, how can you hit what isn't really there?" he asked. As Samahata crashed down towards Naruto, who had rushed forward and was within range of Kisame once more, the man was prepared for him. Naruto stepped past the blade and allowed his own to find its mark on his arm. Naruto saw Samahata attempting to strike him as he was passing by, and he smirked as it went straight through his arm. He then slashed across Kisame's chest in retaliation. The battle lasted for several minutes, during which Naruto kept hitting Kisame. Because of his intangibility, Kisame was unable to hit Naruto at all, no matter how hard he tried. The missing nin was furious because he knew that both of them would be severely injured if Naruto lost that eye, but he was still unharmed and able to fight in spite of Kisame's best efforts. The fact that Samahata was beginning to lose chakra and was unable to absorb any from Naruto made matters worse. His sword and he would eventually run out of fuel, at which point Naruto would eliminate him at last. Naruto knew that Kisame was at the end of his rope and that all that was left to do was hang him with it after a brief pause as they faced one another. Kisame raised his blade to block Naruto's powerful slash as he took a step in his direction, but he blinked when it went straight through him. Then, he realized what Naruto was doing when the blade stopped inside of him, materializing in his heart. Coughing up blood, Kisame realized that Naruto was not moving because he had already grabbed his arm to stop him using Samahata, and that Kisame couldn't heal him with the blade still in place. As he withdrew the blade and swiftly cut through Kisame's arms and throat, allowing the man's body to drop to the ground, Naruto remarked, "Goodbye, sensei. You will be remembered as the greatest of swordsmen." Naruto, who stood above him, looked at Sasuke's squad and flicked the blood from his red blade before sheathing it. Suigetsu appeared completely taken aback by Naruto's victory over Kisame Hoshigaki, whom he had believed to be unbeatable in a straight fight. Even though Karen was staring at Sasuke, who was still sitting next to his brother's body, she appeared shocked as well. Jugo was staring at Naruto with awe on his face. He walked over to stand in front of Sasuke, who was staring at him with a confused, conflicted expression. Naruto calmly remarked, "It's time for you to find out the truth about everything." As they fought Deidara, Gaara and Onoki worked as a perfect team. Gaara's sand and metal particles blocked the explosions, and Onoki's full-on offensive prevented him from making anything too dangerous. Both of them were aware that Deidara could be dangerous if left unattended for an extended period of time, but they also knew that they would soon run out of clay and could finish him with constant pressure. They had seen snippets of the fight between Sasori and their bodyguards during the battle. Even though Sasori and his Sandame Kazekage puppet were still up against the four of them, they were still under pressure because of the puppet's strength and his use of poisons. Concentrating on the task at hand, Gaara eventually saw the gap he had been searching for as he worked his sand to prepare what he hoped would be an ideal response to the current circumstance without resulting in a massive explosion. Gaara's sand shot up as Onoki pushed Deidara aside, causing the blonde bomber to try to avoid it as it wrapped around the pouches holding his clay rather than his arms. When his sand retracted and yanked the pouches away from Deidara, who yelled angrily at his misplaced tool, his one visible eye widened in surprise. "You bastard," he yelled, "you can't take away my art." As his sand buried the explosive material deep enough in the ground that even if Deidara were to use his chakra to cause it to explode, the area would only be slightly damaged. "It is over, Deidara. Surrender now." Gaara calmly responded, "Art can never be taken from another. Only the means that they can make it." Onoki concurred, saying, "Time is up, my foolish pupil. I'll take both of you out with me. I'll become art myself, an explosion that will scar this earth like never before. So cry, weep in awe. Because art is an explosion." Deidara laughed as he sent his final clay bird flying in their direction as he landed on the ground, taking off his Akatsuki coat and shirt to reveal the last mouth on his chest. Holding up the last of his clay to the now unstitched mouth, Gaara's eyes widened as he realized that Deidara was telling the truth. In an attempt to contain the explosion, Gaara swiftly moved his sand and started wrapping it around Deidara, piling on more and more as Onoki retreated toward him. Deidara exploded shortly after, and the blast was as huge as Gaara had imagined, sending the two cages and the sand flying. Gaara's sand shield wrapped around them both, and Onoki was close enough to receive the protection, which was the only reason they survived. The size and extent of the crater that marked the location of Deidara's last stand were genuinely astounding as the last of the wind died down. As he gazed at the crater, Onoki sighed, "My idiotic student." Tsuchikage. Dono. Gaara started as he looked in the direction of their bodyguards, who were still engaged in combat and were on the verge of death after being knocked into vulnerability by the explosion. Baki had the opportunity to strike when Gaara's sand, which he had lifted with a hand, shot out like a bolt of lightning and caught the iron sand the puppet was using. He cut the puppet in two with his Kei's no Yaiba, then let it fall to the ground, where he struck it again to make sure it was completely destroyed. As he glanced at the smashed puppet and then at the 6 people in front of him, Sasori said, "How unfortunate." He added, "I had hoped that Deidara would have been able to keep you distracted a little longer, but it appears that his art was more important than the mission." Gaara said, "It's over, Sasori." "Not yet." Sasori giggled as he took out the final scroll. "I have not come this far to perish here. I intend for my art to last forever, and there is room in my collection now for a new Kei's cage. And a Tsuchikage puppet of your caliber would be most impressive as well." With his Jinten ready, Onoki growled, "I have no intention of being a puppet. But that will wait until my puppets have finished with you. Behold the true mastery of my art, Akahiji. Hyaki no Sa-en. Red secret technique. Performance of 100 puppets." Sasori calmly responded, opening the scroll. Neither did the Sandaime Kazekage. Gaara could hear Kankuro mutter a curse at the sight of the 100 different puppets that were connected to more than 100 different strings. Onoki said, "HMPH. These Tinker toys won't stop us." With Kankuro frowning in concern, Sasori sent the puppets hurtling in their direction and warned, "Don't think too lightly of them. With these 100 puppets I have destroyed an entire nation." He muttered, "No lag," as his puppets began to struggle with them. As Baki cut through some that came too close, he muttered, "Damn, he really is a living legend." As she spat a glob of lava at one of the puppets and allowed it to melt into slag, the female guard for the Tsuchikage declared, "It doesn't matter. We destroy them all." Gaara remained silent while his iron sand, which he had taken from the Sandaime Kazekage, moved and started to clog the puppet's joints. This caused the puppets to slow down, which allowed his gold sand to begin crushing each one in turn. After taking a moment to prepare, Onoki amazed them by producing one of the biggest Jinten techniques he could manage, trapping over 80 of the puppets inside. Onoki snarled, "Numbers won't do you any good here. Jinten. Genkei Hikari no Jutsu. Dust release. Detachment of the primitive world technique." The enormous sphere then slightly withdrew before exploding, destroying the puppets inside until nothing was left. When he saw all of his puppets destroyed, Sasori's eyes widened in horror, realizing that he had seriously underestimated his opponents. Gaara's sand had completely encased him, revealing only his face, before he could move or try to fight his way free. Gaara held up his hand and made the well-known crushing motion, causing a tiny splatter of blood to appear around his human core. "This is the end, Akasuna no Sasori. For your crimes against Tsunagakure I will execute you here." When it was done, the sand withdrew, and Gaara's sand scattered the empty puppet husk before Kankuro. Thanks?" Kankuro asked, blinking bewilderedly. "It is too useful a tool to throw away," Gaara said. "I would rather that you have the puppet and know that it is being used by someone that I trust." Looking at the puppet, Kankuro nodded and grinned slightly, promising to begin playing with it in the coming days. "I won't let you down." "Now that the unpleasantness has been settled, Tsuchikage, Dono, shall we be on our way?" asked Gaara. "Indeed. Let's go and see what has that damn Hokage in such an uproar," Onoki gasped. The hidden genjutsu user's constant shifting distortions were the only thing keeping Kakuzu from having his stomach empty itself. The 3 Doki were still holding his masks in place, and Kimimaro was intensifying his attack on him in an attempt to destroy what was left of his heart. He had only failed because, despite his continuous use of genjutsu, he was able to break them right before he had to block or dodge an attack, only to be struck by the genjutsu again each time. After skidding back from the most recent engagement, he came to the conclusion that his best course of action was to simply destroy the area and cease attempting to carry out his regular tasks. He didn't have to worry about being caught off guard again because the 3rd member of their group was still engaged in combat with Hidan, unless a 4th member had not yet come forward. As his lightning mask continued to attack with lightning bolts coming from its mouth, he focused his fire and wind masks, which fell back to him and fused with him. He saw Kimimaro turn as he joined his 2 other hearts, and he was so surprised by how precisely the child had shot the fingertips from his right hand that he saw it smash through the heart behind the mask, shattering it and making Kakuzu mutter another curse as he felt it die. As he transitioned to his 2nd stage curse seal, Kimimaro said, "Now there are only 3 left. And you have brought them all together. I will finish you. With his face mask off and his hideous face exposed, Kakuzu grinned and laughed, saying, "Not a chance in hell. I'm going to leave nothing but ashes." He sensed something strange happening as he built the enormous fireball and wind blast that would burn everything nearby. A faint jolt in his senses, and when he became aware of the sensation, he froze. One thing he had learned from surviving numerous threats and facing some of the world's most dangerous shinobi was to never question the nagging feeling that something was amiss in the current circumstance. As his chakra continued to fluctuate, he came to the realization that it was a multi-layered genjutsu. The blast would have gone up and to the right enough for Kimimaro to have his opening because the first layer had slightly distorted his aim. The idea that someone was close to him was the last layer, which was to give the impression that the Doki had fallen back a bit farther than they had. After combining these elements, Kakuzu swiftly modified his aim to eliminate Kimimaro, realizing he was in trouble. He felt a metal object slicing through the back of his neck as he fired the shot, and his head rolled away from his body, causing him to collapse on the ground in complete confusion. The woman behind him caught his attention. She had horns, gray skin that was gradually fading to reveal her normal color, and bright red hair. She had a flute on her hip and a bloody short sword in her hand. Kimimaro observed that as the body crumbled into black threads, he fell for it. Looked down at the severed head, Tayuya said, "Fucking moron. He didn't realize that I trapped him in an illusion of him breaking the illusion. Then again, triple layer genjutsu is a very difficult art." As he began to leave, Kimimaro said, "Lord Orochimaru will be pleased." Tayuya blinked in surprise. "What?" Kimimaro turned to face her and remarked, "I said Lord Naruto will be pleased." "No you didn't. You said Orochimaru. Why would I say that?" Kimimaro scowled at this point. "You tell me. You said it, you bastard, or Lord Orochimaru will punish you." He said icily, "You will not address your superiors like that." "You just said it again." Once more, Kimimaro walked away, saying, "I said Lord Naruto will. You are clearly not well." Tayuya complained, "Like hell it's me." Now Haku was in serious trouble. Whatever Hidan had done to himself, it had not only made him stronger and faster, but it also gave him the ability to sever her mirrors. She didn't know what was going on, but she had the feeling that he had entered a different kind of existence as a result of whatever he had done by taking away that representation of his god. When she rolled to the side and saw the ground darken where his scythe had touched it, he said, "Die. Let death consume you." His scythe had just missed her head. As she produced her Makaya Hayasha once more and attempted to render him incapable in this manner, Haku shot back, "Never." Each blow seemed to land, but he continued to move forward, methodically destroying each mirror one by one until Haku was once more on the ground, attempting to keep her distance from the hideous entity in front of her. Hidan's twin voices added to the unsettling nature of his message when he said, "You will perish here mortal. You will be reborn as a devout follower and be grant the eternal blessing of slaughter to those blind fools." Haku had to use every last bit of his skill to keep from freaking out. Since she started working for Naruto, she had engaged in numerous fights and killed numerous people. She was aware that running or panicking would only result in her death. After taking a deep breath, she concentrated on the information she had gathered about this entity and came to the conclusion that a different strategy would be required because it had to exist in some capacity in order to perform its functions. Haku started what was probably going to be her final ninjutsu performance by making her mirrors once more to divert his attention. After a few minutes of preparation, Hidan had destroyed the last of the mirrors and was now concentrating on the true her. "Repent." Haku slammed her hand on the ground and said, "No." Her three clones followed suit, saying, "Hidan. Yatsu no ha men karazatai reikei." Absolute zero penalty from 4 directions. A cold that defies description sprang from the 4 hands and flew in the direction of Hidan, who was standing in the middle. Hidan quickly realized that he couldn't get his body to move any faster until it finally stopped, frozen perfectly inside the square. The man tried to move, blinking, but found it harder and harder to take even a single step. As he did so, the cold spread to the square's edges before it dropped even further. He stared to say, "WH," before his jaw dropped open and his face showed signs of bewilderment. "This was a technique designed to stop any enemy in my path for all eternity." Haku responded, "You are trapped in that square, where the temperature has reached absolute zero. The point where even time itself has frozen. You will be trapped there until the end of time itself, never moving, never living but never dying. Farewell, priest of Jashin Hidan, may you enjoy your frozen eternity." Haku pivoted on her heel and walked away after saying those words. The ground moved just enough for Zetsu to emerge from it as she made her way to meet up with the other 2 members of her team. The white half observed, "This is bad." Very bad, we better tell them. As Zetsu reported in, Nagato sat motionless. After losing 3 different Biju, he had a hunch something wasn't right, but Zetsu telling him that Naruto had given his people orders to kill 2 of his members was more than he could have imagined the blonde would do. Zetsu's current report was equally poor, and he had instructed him to check on the other teams to be sure. Through the mouth of his diva path, Nagato reiterated, "They are all dead." Yes. Sasuke got to Itachi. His body is gone, but the signs of the battle are obvious. And it would seem that Naruto killed Kisame himself. The sheer excess of water on the ground and the way that he was killed could only have been done by Naruto. Even the fake that we had pretending to be Kisame was killed, and Samahata is gone. And Sasori and Deidara were killed by the Kazekage? It looks that way. Though it seems that the Tsuchikage was also involved. The two may be in alliance now. They are a minor threat. Nagato sighed. Naruto is the larger threat that needs to be dealt with. He knows too much about how we operate and what our plans were. Find him Zetsu, and kill him. There was a tense silence between Naruto and Sasuke as they sat in his office. Sasuke wasn't sure how to start, and Naruto seemed happy to wait for him to speak. Sasuke had taken the time to reflect on what had happened between him and his brother now that they were back in Uzushiro, and he was almost positive that something was wrong with the whole situation, as if he had been misled about this one important fact all of his life. "You promised to tell me the truth about everything once I killed Itachi." Sasuke ultimately responded, "I need to know the truth. Why does it feel like I did the wrong thing even though I finally avenged my family?" "Because your vengeance isn't complete yet." Naruto responded, "I do owe you an apology. Itachi desired to have you kill him before he perished of natural causes, to kill him and wipe out the stain on the Uchiha name. However, his plan was for you to stay in Konoha and do it as one of their Shinbi. He underestimated your hatred for him, though that hatred might have waned. Allow me to tell you the truth now, the truth behind all of it. The Uchiha massacre, your brother's sudden shift in tactics and beliefs, and the necessity of having you kill him." Naruto took a moment to gather his thoughts before continuing, saying, "We'll start with the first matter, the Uchiha massacre. Itachi told you that it was done because he wanted to test his powers, but that is a lie. Up until the day of his death, Itachi was a pacifist. He didn't care for violence and didn't want to level it against anyone. In fact, he had the lowest body count of any active Anbu-level shinobi seen in more than 50 years. No, your brother committed the massacre because the Uchiha clan was about to become a threat to the entire village. They had planned a coup, and the late Sandame's aides had discovered this plot and secretly planned to wipe out the entire Uchiha clan in order to prevent a civil war from erupting. My father was unaware of this, and he was in the middle of talking down your father. Things would have turned out very differently if Itachi had known that the mission lacked the Hokage's approval and if my father had known that those 3 had issued those directives. But they didn't. Itachi, who had been ordered to murder the entire Uchiha family, made a deal with you to either spare your life or reveal the scheme. Naturally, they agreed, intending to use you to establish a completely new Uchiha clan that would unquestionably be devoted to the village. Thus, although not by himself, Itachi carried out his massacre. The man who helped me get out of Konoha when I was a kid had come back to exact revenge on the Uchiha for the way he had been treated. Through their collaboration, I got to know your brother and Itachi received an invitation to join the Akatsuki. Itachi wanted you to hate him, to kill him and cleanse the name of your family. So in order to ensure that you would hate him more than anything, he shifted his own beliefs. He became the kind of monster that you would hunt down and murder with all of your might, and when I learned this and the fact that he was already dying, I swore that I wouldn't allow one of the most powerful shinobi that I had ever met die of sickness. That is why I helped keep you focused on killing Itachi, because that was his dying wish and I respected him. However, the true target of your hatred, the ones that forced this entire event to happen, reside in Konoha still to this day, enjoying their retirement and living quietly in the shadows. I promised you vengeance and I intend to deliver. There are 3 more that need to be punished for their deeds. 3 more that must be made to pay for turning your brother into a villain. So you say, how do I know that you're telling me the truth? Sasuke inquired, already furious. You already admit that you've been holding information back that I had a right to know. All for Itachi's sake. Calmly responded Naruto, but if it is proof that you want, I can give that to you easy enough. Reaching for the files, Naruto removed them and gave them to Sasuke. I have 2 spies in Konoha that managed to gather all of the documents that you will find in there, along with the hidden information caches that Itachi had left on the off chance that those 3 did not hold up their end of the bargain. Read them, see that I have told you everything now, and see that I have kept my word to you. Naruto then got up and left the room, allowing Sasuke to begin reading the files. It took a while to read them all, and then again, but he knew he had finally seen the whole picture when he had read them until the words were visible through a red haze. He moved to one of the mirrors on the side of the room and noticed that his Sharingan had changed to the Mangekyo Sharingan in both of his eyes, with bloody tears streaming from them. He reached up to his cheek and lightly touched the liquid, revealing it to be blood. He blinked in shock. As he returned to the room, Naruto questioned, "So what now, Sasuke? Will you do nothing and vanish from the history books, or will you exact your revenge on those who destroyed your family?" "You have to ask," Sasuke replied as he faced Naruto. "My family has not yet been avenged. When those three lie dead and the Uchiha name is truly cleansed, then I'll be done." "That is what I was hoping you would say." Naruto laughed as he extended his hand. "Then let us begin our work in earnest, my general. There is much to do before we can even attempt to wreak a fitting vengeance against those three." Minato sighed as he took a seat in the Tetsu no Kuni meeting room chair. Arriving first had been stressful enough, and it had taken several days to get there. After a week of waiting for the other four to arrive, the 6 leaders were finally seated for their meeting. "You called for this meeting, Hokage." "Dono," Mifune said, "please inform us why you called this summit." "I will. Thank you, Mifune." "Dono," Minato nodded as he started talking. "I am sure that all of you are already aware of the rebirth of Uzu no Kuni in its capital city Uzushiro. I bring grim tidings regarding them, and these events may have terrible consequences for all of us." "What do you mean?" scowled the Raikage. "Uzushiro has been rebuilt to withstand a war. Given how it was destroyed all those years ago, this shouldn't be too surprising. No offense is intended to anyone in this room." Minato added quickly in order to demonstrate that he held no ill will toward the people who attacked it all that time ago. "In hopes of rekindling the old alliance between our villages, I sent a team of 3 shinobi to act as envoys. They were returned to the village, their minds overridden by seals to turn them into suicide bombers, and they attacked the village. We managed to capture one of them alive and his mind was shattered beyond the point of recovery, but it is obvious that they intend to cause conflict with all nations." Onoki sneered, "All nations, or just you?" "All." Minato replied, "They're gathering armies and one of your own Jinchuruki is currently among them." Onoki yelled, "What? Han is with them, as is the Jinchuruki of the Nanabi." Minato gave a nod. "Along with one of my own rogue shinobi, Sasuke Uchiha." "Troubling," Gaara murmured. "This does explain the urgency of the meeting. If they have taken multiple Jinchuruki, they could cause a great deal of harm." "Then what are we waiting for?" he growled. "We hit them hard and fast before they have a chance to get their footing." "It's too late for that," Mei replied. "I have been investigating the rebuilding of Uzu no Kuni for some time now, along with why the Sanbi never reappeared after we killed my predecessor." With hope that the Mizukage could provide some insight into the situation, Minato asked, "And what did you find?" "Their capital has been built to withstand a siege from multiple Biju. And they have been gathering shinobi from all over the lands. They have had years to solidify their position, and from the looks of their fortress I would say that they have succeeded. As to the secondary matter, I believe that they actually have 3 Jinchuruki present, as the Sanbi should have reappeared but in fact never did. There were a number of unusual persons snooping around Mizu no Kuni during the aftermath of the event, and it is possible that another party managed to get to the Biju first. So they might have 3 Jinchuruki. So what? We hit them hard and fast with our superior trained Shinbi and we wipe them out before they get any bigger." A was repeated. Mifune looked intently at Minato and questioned, "Are you certain that violence is their aim?" "As certain as I can be." "Then let the summit decide on the matter now. Shall we deal with this potential threat to the whole of our lands?" Mifune responded. "Aye." With a growl, Onoki said, "I want my Jinchuruki back, damn it." Mei concurred, "Aye. They are a threat to my lands as well." "Aye. If they are stealing Jinchuruki, it's only a matter of time before they try something in my lands," he replied. "Aye." Minato turned to face Gaara and gave a simple nod. "I have no intention of dragging my people into another war, even one that is as noble as this." Gaara said quietly, "Uzu no Kuni is far from my people, and attempting to get the Council of Shinobi to back such a plan would be next to impossible. All I can offer is supplies to those that would intend to attack." Minato scowled and said, "So you will not take part yourself?" "I must consider what is best for my village, Hokage. Dono, much as you have considered what is best for yours," replied Gaara. "I am not turning my back on our alliance, but I will not be able to send reinforcements unless they attack you directly. Staying out of this until you feel there is no other course of action, I approve." Onoki laughed. "I have a more personal stake in his matter and I won't be denied. The question is, what will we do with the rogue shinobi that are there?" Minato proposed, "We will let their respective villages handle things." "Well, that's all well and good. But the Mizukage and I are much closer to them than the rest of you. We'll take the first shot and I promise to return the Biju to their respective homes. I responded. I am agreed. Mei replied, we have much more experience with naval combat than the rest of you. We can land on the shores of Uzu no Kuni and deal a great deal of damage before the rest of you arrive to support us in the taking of Uzushiro. When Mifune asked, then you are all agreed. The cages nodded. Very well then. This potential uprising will be handled by all of you then. The samurai of Tetsu no Kuni will remain neutral. As the meeting came to an end, each of the 5 cages gave a different nod. As they examined the completed item, Hinata and Neji scowled. They had been working on this seal for years, and it was finally ready to release their family from its own curse. Originally, only the main family would have received the new seal, but they were unable to get the branch family to remove theirs as they had hoped. They had created a completely new version of the seal and located several books on the subject with Tenten's assistance. Depending on what seal a person already had, this one would respond differently. It would function as a key, eliminating some elements from play while preserving others, if it were the current cursed seal that each branch member possessed. In addition to making sure it couldn't be gotten around, it would stop the sealed from feeling pain. However, the effect was very different for those without the seal. It would stop them from attempting to harm another member of the clan unless their lives were in danger and would hurt them if they attempted to do so against the branch family. Neji looked at it and sighed, but we have done it. It took much longer than I thought. Now the tricky part, applying it to everyone. Hinata nodded. We would only have one night to do it. Neji answered, most of the branch family would help us. Hinata grinned viciously and said, then we can't waste any time. We do this tonight. The group moved through the Hyuga compound's halls that night in silence, working swiftly to apply the seals to everyone inside. They all understood that failure was not an option, and they quickly and precisely installed the seals on every sleeping member of the main house. After it was done, Hinata nodded and inhaled deeply before turning on the new seals for everyone. Every Hyuga let out muffled screams that were cut off in their throats as Hinata's final thought was what had gone wrong. Hinata became aware that she wasn't alone when she heard laughter coming from behind her. As the person approached and knelt down beside her paralyzed body, she was forced to wait since she was unable to move a muscle. You did very well, my little Hyuga puppet. Yami whispered in her ear, I couldn't have done a better job myself. He paused as he looked at her and his grin widened. You still haven't realized what you have done, do you? You thought you were fixing your family and removing the stigma of the branch family. Well, in a way you have. You have made your entire clan equal. As my slaves. Oh, I am sure you are confused and wondering how I did this, why I did this. The answers are simple really. I did all of this to further weaken Konoha. Like I told you a long time ago, the world is going to be changing, and by removing your clan from Konoha's ranks I have weakened it even further. As for the how, that is the much more interesting answer. I took time to plant the false trail and books in your path, tricking all 3 of you into doing this. This has been years in the making, Hinata, and it's all thanks to you and Neji that it has finally come to pass. Your entire family will now be joining me. Now I command you to move and speak freely, Hinata. The time to test your resolve is at hand. When she was finally able to move, Hinata gasped and turned to look at the dark-eyed man who was crouched beside her. She wanted to flee him with all of her instincts. That she would perish if she fought him because he was an apex predator in her. Hinata questioned, what are you going to do? With a smile that never wavered, he answered, take over the world. What will you do now, Hinata? Answer me truthfully. Those final 3 words struck her like hammer blows, and she realized that he was using the new seal's power to stop her from lying. I don't know. Probably whatever you command, since I can't resist you, replied Hinata. Then let me phrase this better. What do you want to do? I only wanted to help my family. You still can, little puppet. What do you mean? I can place you and Neji in charge of all of the Hyuga clan. I can make it so that they must all obey your every whim. And all I want in exchange is you to swear right now, that you will obey me. That I am your master in all things. Yami responded, say these words and I will make it so. Don't say them and you will just be another thrall before me, and I will simply let Neji run the show. There is plenty of anger and hatred in him that he would leap at the chance for retribution against those that took his father from him. A part of Hinata wanted to turn away from him as her eyes grew wide. But her thoughts returned to the downpour, with him bolstering her confidence and demonstrating her strength. They both knew that he had shaped her into the person she is today. Yami chuckled as Hinata uttered, I swear to obey you, master. The rest of the Hyuga clan awoke and became trapped inside their own bodies after he said, oh very good little puppet. Now it's time to begin. Awaken slaves. As of this moment, all of the Hyuga clan will obey the commands of Hinata Hyuga and Neji Hyuga. They're your masters now, just as I am above them. Hinata looked at him and said, "What now? It's time we left." He laughed. "I have uses for this clan." "Of course." Hinata bowed, and as the Hyuga clan assembled in front of him, he smiled at her once more before dragging them all into the Kamui dimension and returning them to Uzushiro. "They're all gone!" exclaimed Minato. The whole Hyuga clan had vanished when he returned to the village early that day. None of them had left through the gate, and there were no bodies or other indications of them. Minato was currently standing in the abandoned Hyuga compound with Jiraiya and Sume Inuzuka, who was in charge of the search. Not a single trace. Sume growled. "I've had my clan's best trackers scouring the area, but it's like they just vanished into thin air. We found no unusual scents, so there is no telling what happened. If I didn't know any better, I'd think they suddenly learned how to use the Hiraishin. When it rains, it pours." Jiraiya murmured. "This couldn't have happened at a worse time. There are no leads." "None. Though they aren't the only ones missing. Tenten has disappeared as well," Sume replied. "Tenten. She was that young Chunin I was helping with her Fuinjutsu training." Minato sighed. "She's gone as well?" "Yeah. No sign of her either." Sume replied. "She never went back home apparently, and she is teammates with one of the missing Hyugas, Neji Hyuga. He's one of Guy's students." Jiraiya replied. "I'll go and talk to him, see if he can shed any light on this matter." "Good. I need to start mobilizing our forces. Without the Hyuga clan, we are going to be at a distinct disadvantage in the coming battles. We need to be careful. Sume, continue the investigation and have the Aburame brought into this as well. Their insects might be able to find something that you can't." Minato gave the order. The two nodded and left for their separate tasks, with Minato making her way to the Hokage's office. "Understood." Naruto smiled as he watched the ships marshalling across the harbor. All of the shinobi on board the Kiri and Kumo vessels had already been given the correct information. Said Sasuke, "That's a big fleet." Neji said, "I am counting more than 500 different ships. Most belong to Kirigakure." "That it is." Hinata questioned, "Shall I give the order to start the defenses?" "No, just sit back and watch. You're about to see several years' worth of planning come into a single moment." Naruto laughed. "I have waited for this day for so many years, and now it is finally here. Let the war begin. And let our empire rise." Mei shouted across the waters to the ship where he was standing and said, "We are agreed then, Raikage, Dono." The dark-skinned man growled, "Let you go in first and push back their initial assault? I am curious as to why you'd offer that." "My own abilities would allow my shinobi to get in close enough to ensure we capture the harbor and stop any secondary measures they may take against us," Mei responded. I nodded and turned to face Uzu no Kuni. "All right, then. Work quickly. The sooner this is finished, the better." It had only taken a few short days to combine their forces, and after that, he had sailed away with his 200 ships. Although they weren't all of his shinobi forces, they were among his best at fighting at sea, and he was aware that an island nation like Uzu would have many traps. His own advisors supported the strategy, and he wasn't opposed to allowing the Mizukage to take the harbor by absorbing the majority of the losses. This would increase the amount of loot for his own village. He was accustomed to questioning, and his only suspicion was that they had a covert weapon on hand that could penetrate the defenses with little loss. "We are watching them closely," Darui replied. "They pull anything sneaky, we'll know." As the Kiri ships surged in the direction of the harbor, A snarled, "Good." A waited for the traps or defenses to activate, and bided their time, and waited some more as the ships entered the harbor, where a massive fog formed. It was then that A realized the Mizukage had probably made a poison gas to deal with any defenders in the harbor, while her own forces, wearing special masks, moved through the cover to get rid of the defenses that were still in place. After another 10 minutes, a yellow signal flare appeared, and A gave a nod. The captain of his ship yelled, "Move in," as it and the rest of the Kumo portion of the fleet began to move forward once more. Everything went wrong at that point. Bright flashes of light emerged from beneath the water's surface as the first ships approached the harbor. Mines detonated, destroying the nearby ships' hulls to nothing more than kindling and sending frightened shinobi hurtling into the flaming wreckage, where only a small number of them managed to stand on the waves before being caught and pulled down. A loud thwacking sound came from the towers on either side of the harbor mouth as the ships approached, revealing the second line of defense. I saw something big and swift fly through the air as it crashed through another ship, and everyone could hear the screams. As the shinobi that survived started to run towards the harbor and met the last hurdle, the sound kept repeating as more ships were destroyed by this invisible weapon. As the Kumo shinobi charged, Hundreds of Kiri shinobi on the docks and ships flashed hand signs for different Sweden techniques, striking them and pulling hundreds of them down into the depths to join those who had fallen with their ships. We were betrayed. A cried in desperation and fury. As she watched the scene unfold in the harbor, Hinata exclaimed, "Amazing." As the Kumo fleet was being reduced to ribbons, Sasuke raised an eyebrow and asked, "How did you do it?" "I turned all of Mizu no Kuni to my side years ago." Naruto laughed. "The moment the shinobi villages agreed to turn on me, I had Kirigakure play it out like they were on their side. The Raikage wouldn't turn down the chance to send another in first to spring a trap, never suspecting that the trap was letting them into the harbor where we could turn them loose." With a bitter expression, Neji observed, "They aren't heading for the harbor anymore." Sasuke said, "I'm honestly surprised they tried as long as they did. They are going exactly where I want them to go." Naruto laughed. "Signal Han to launch his strike as they approach. I want to lure out their Jinchuruki." "Which one did they bring though?" Sasuke inquired. "Yugito ni, or Killer B?" Killer B would be the smart choice, but the Raikage has a strong bond with him and that particular Jinchuruki has a bit of a wanderlust to him. Naruto added, "Odds are that he brought Yugito to battle, and their Han will have an advantage." With his eyes turned west, Naruto saw the Kumo ships beach themselves farther out to sea, their shinobi swiftly disembarking as they readied themselves to establish their position before advancing farther inland, probably in anticipation of reinforcements after Kiri had exposed their true loyalty. A sphere of complete devastation was hurled towards them from farther inland, and Naruto had to laugh as they leapt to the ground to escape the worst of the blast, which destroyed another half a dozen ships and damaged another dozen. "It seems like Han needs to work on his accuracy. He could have taken out most of them right there," Neji grumbled. "He did exactly as he was told." Naruto responded, "I don't need them all dead yet. If their Jinchuruki is among their numbers, killing them would result in that Biju reappearing elsewhere, and I can't afford for out enemies to get their hands on another weapon later down the road that could prove problematic to our plans." I told him that when the time comes to ensure they can't escape easily. Look, he's moving now to rendezvous with his squad and will hit them from a different direction now. As they moved to be right in the path between the Kumo shinobi and the fort where Naruto was standing watching, a small red figure was emerging from the trees with a group of shinbi. Naruto pointed to this figure. The fort itself wasn't particularly impressive, but it was a great place to observe the island nation's whole northern face, so he could keep an eye on events as they happened there. Not that it was the only thing he was doing. While Fu was in full Biju form, floating high overhead where no one could see her and prepared to strike at any time, Yagura was keeping watch over the western reaches of Uzu, waiting for the Iwa and Konoha forces to arrive. As Han's force began to attack, Sasuke nodded and said, "Here they go." The Jinchuruki personally selected a number of elite shinobi from the Kiri force to serve in Han's force. Their strong affinity for Doden and Kaden techniques made them oddballs, but that only strengthened Han's plan. To keep the Kumo shinobi off balance while they began the collaboration technique, a small group launched multiple fire ninjutsu in their direction. Before Han and the other shinobi moved forward and launched a barrage of fire at the Kumo forces that would either kill them all or make their Jinchuruki reveal their presence, Naruto watched with interest as the 10 most proficient Doden users formed a massive curved wall behind the Kumo shinobi. As planned, a figure advanced to the front and changed into a gigantic Nekomata, allowing the fire to strike and be consumed. The rest of the unit fell back while Han remained in place. The giant cat yowled, sending a flaming hairball flying towards Han's unit, only to have it blocked by a large slab of stone. Frenching, Neji asked, "What is he doing?" Laughing, Naruto said, "Getting ready." As the Nekomata charged at Han, he started to transform himself into the Urukuma. With a shriek of pain and annoyance, he rushed towards her, keeping her off balance, and used his big head to send the cat flying into the sea. "So now what?" inquired Sasuke. "Han will keep her busy," Naruto responded, "and if things start to look bad, Fu will move in and assist him. Now we go and deal with the rest of the Kumo forces." With a nod, the 3 shinobi trailed behind their emperor as he led them and his own shinobi force out of the fort to confront the remaining Kumo forces. They saw that the Kumo shinobi were already attacking as they advanced to support Han's squad. They sent waves of lightning and earth flying in the direction of the defenders, who retaliated with their own fire and earth attacks. Naruto gave the 3 the order, "Watch my flanks." Hinata exclaimed, "You're taking the field yourself? The Raikage is there. Of all of our forces, I am the only one that can take him in this situation without backup. I need you focusing on making sure that he doesn't have backup of his own." Naruto responded, "Kill anyone that gets in our way." "Of course." Sasuke laughed. "What, did you think we were just going to offer them a coupon for ramen?" "I would hope not." Naruto laughed, glancing at Sasuke. Ramen shouldn't be wasted on the soon-to-be deceased. With that, he marched forward, his blade out, the Gurata Seishin howling as he used a single swing to sever any attack that came within range. He sent a blast toward the Kumo shinobi who had to jump over the attack or drop to the ground, but some were not quick enough because it sliced through the lower legs of those who didn't jump high enough and the heads of those who were too slow to drop. He knew that he was creating a spectacle, but he also knew that it would draw out the more dangerous enemy. Many began to panic as a result of the latter's screams, which only served to emphasize the importance of fear. As the Raikage entered the field with his own bodyguards at his side, someone yelled, "Don't back down, we can win this." The leader of Kumogakure rushed towards Naruto with his Raiden no Yoroi, lightning release armor, at full power, his hair standing on end, and a fist headed straight for him. Naruto reprimanded him, saying, "Don't make promises you can't keep, Raikage-san." He had already seen it coming to some extent and was attempting to dodge it, his own blade lashing out in a quick counter that forced it to back off a little. As he began to ask Naruto, "Who the hell are you?" scowled and acknowledged, "Those are some good reflexes." Naruto smiled as he saw the Raikage blink in shock at this. "In the few years I've been preparing this Raikage-san, I've gone by many names. I was known as Yami almost 4 years ago when I infiltrated the Chunin exams and humiliated Naruto Namikaze. I have been known as Master and Emperor to my servants. To you, you may call me Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, son of Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki, and I am the one who will conquer this broken world." He smiled as he saw the Raikage blink in shock. He took a small step back, sensing more than he could see the impending blow, and he could make out the thin line of the wind chakra that had damaged his armor. With an open hand, he created a green Rasengan and launched a swift counterattack, attempting to slam the lightning-coated fist into Naruto, who only fell beneath it. Naruto slammed the sphere home, sending the larger man flying backwards as his face twisted from the pain of the attack. "Futon. Rasengan," he growled. He looked to his sides and saw that Hinata and Neji had already successfully pushed back a dark-skinned man with a big sword of his own who was one of the Raikage's men. Sasuke, meanwhile, was busy eliminating any Kumo shinobi who ventured too near the area where Naruto and Ei were fighting, having reportedly used his Tsukiyomi to trap the other bodyguard. A attempted a counterattack, but Naruto blocked it with his blade and blinked as he was actually being pushed back by the force of the attack. Naruto chose to let the smile fade a little in order to shock the Raikage. He went intangible, and it just shot through him. He blinked in surprise as Naruto hit his back, the blade effortlessly slicing through his Raiden no Yoroi, causing the man to howl in pain and rage as he turned to face the younger shinobi who was standing across from him with a smug smile. "You seem surprised, Raikage-san. Did you really think that this was my only trick?" Growled, "I'm going to kill you." The man rushed him again with blinding speed, and Naruto only reacted in time because of his increased awareness and his Sharingan eye, which allowed him to sense and know when the attacks were coming and dodge or block them at his own leisure. "Oh, you are more than welcome to try. But we both know that you are not nearly man enough to overcome me." Naruto laughed as he provoked the Raikage further into a blind rage and then planned to use that to take him down. With swift patterns of blade flashing, he deflected incoming attacks and allowed Ei to begin sustaining wounds that, if he survived, would take a long time to heal because each cauterized wound left a scarlet mark on his darkened skin. As Naruto moved in with a rising slash, already anticipating the Raikage's next move, he dodged past a lariat and slammed the flat of his blade into Ei's back, sending the man reeling. The tip of Naruto's blade was already rising up in a deadly rising slash that Ei could not avoid as he tried to move to his left, spinning around in the hopes of catching Naruto's side unprotected. He felt it bite into his cheek and continue up at an angle, cutting through the flesh with excruciating ease and leaving a diagonal scar from his right cheekbone across the bridge of his nose and going just over his left eyebrow. The injured Raikage lay on the ground in front of Naruto, who was standing over the man, as the pain was sufficient to cause the man to collapse in shock as his Raiden no Yoroi vanished. As he prepared his blade to kill the Raikage, Naruto laughed and said, "I can't promise that you won't feel a thing, but this will be quick. An era is ending, Raikage-san. It is a pity you won't be alive to see it." In a flash, Naruto was gone from the battlefield and standing in a small wooded area on the northern part of the island, with Minato and Kushina standing opposite him along with their advance team. A bright yellow light appeared around Naruto as he swung the blade down at the defeated Raikage. A firm hand then grabbed his shoulder. Minato snarled, "Yami. Father." Naruto smiled now, observing the man's eyes enlarge while Kushina's jaw dropped slightly in surprise. She said, "Nah. Naruto. Indeed. You're early." He breathed deeply, I had hoped to have mounted the Kumo forces' heads on the northern beach as a greeting for you and the old bastard that runs Iwagakure, but I guess this will have to do. Minato shook his head and said, No, this isn't true. What isn't? That I outsmarted you for so many years, that I rebuilt this entire nation, that I have become so strong, or that I turned my hand against the pathetic excuse of humans that gave birth to me and then chose my twin over me, sneering with disdain. No, this is all real. And this is much better, much more intimate. I wouldn't be able to savor the moment when I absolutely destroy you otherwise. Minato started by saying, I know that we have had our differences. By snorting, the Raikage said, that is putting it lightly. Minato handed the dark-skinned man a Hiraishin kunai and added, but I want to give you this. Frowing, said, why are you giving me this? On the off chance that we are walking into a trap. Replied Minato. There are too many unknowns and I don't know what might be waiting for you when you get there. This might be a good way for us to get an extra force to bear against them, or to get a small force out if you find yourself in a bad situation. Why me? Because we have fought and I know what type of man you are. The Mizukage is still too new and I am unsure of what you will do when things start to go bad. I know you will stand by your men no matter what, and I know you would rather have an out for some of them than nothing at all, replied Minato. After weighing his words against the kunai in his hands, he appeared to consider them for a while before nodding his agreement and saying, doubt I'll need this. Don't take too long or you'll miss out on all of the fighting. Shortly after the harbor was not taken as one of his Jonin flew high overhead using his eagle summons, Minato said over the communications, well, what do you see? Looks like Kiri did double-cross us. The Jonin reported, Kumo has taken a beating and they are landing to the west of the harbor. Damn. Minato yelled, okay, prepare to drop a kunai in a deserted location, we need to move in soon. The Jonin retorted, whoa, one of the enemy Jinchuruki just shot a Bijudama at them. With a quick confirmation, Minato turned back to his small assault squad and ordered, hurry then. We don't have time to waste. Once you drop it I want you to keep monitoring the battle. It included 2 medic nin that Tsunade had recently trained, his wife, and a dozen Jonin-level shinobi who could employ a variety of potent jutsu. After a moment, word reached Kushina and one of the Jonin, and Minato started Hiraishining back and forth between the 2 kunai on different shores. After half a dozen trips, they began to cautiously make their way through the trees until they came to a small clearing, at which point they halted when they got the next piece of information. Sir, it looks like Yami has taken the field. He's facing the Raikage and it appears that Sasuke Uchiha, Hinata Hyuga and Neji Hyuga are with him. Kushina exclaimed, what? Why are those 2 with him? Minato snarled in exasperation, he somehow managed to get the entire Hyuga clan. How is it holding up? Seals controlling them probably. There was a brief pause before he proceeded play by play, pausing when it collapsed, saying, he's dropped the kunai behind Yami. Not too good. He's losing ground, and whatever it is that Yami has done to his sword it's cutting through the Raikage's Raiden no Yoroi. Minato wasted no time in concentrating on that specific kunai. He appeared on the opposite side of the island just in time to grab Yami and Hiraishin with his bare rings before returning to his advance team to confront the young shinobi. Now Kushina shook her head and said, no, you can't be Naruto. No child of ours would. Would what? Naruto chuckled and said, everything I am is what you let me become. Minato questioned in surprise, let you become? Never would have happened. I would have remained in Konoha, never realizing my full potential and never bringing about the means to finally end the cycle of hatred, he said, pausing as he moved his hand holding a Ka Rippa in an arc to emphasize their surroundings. If you had taken a moment to simply look after me like actual parents should this, he said. End the cycle of hatred. Do you even hear yourself, Naruto? You aren't ending it. You are only bringing about more misery and death. So short-sighted. Naruto complained. What I intend to do is end the cycle by bringing everything under my thumb. Once all of the world bows to my empire will the cycle be broken and then true peace will begin. At what cost? How many have to die for your ambition? As many as it takes. I do not claim to offer the easiest road, but the path I walk will save more lives in the long term than anything that has been done in countless generations, replied Naruto. Naruto, it's not too late. You can stop this now, stop this madness. Come home, Naruto, please, Kushina pleaded. With unwavering intensity, Naruto gazed at her while his black eyes held hers. You had your chance a long time ago, you failed. Before the medics and 3 other Jonin realized what was happening, he vanished from view and materialized in the center of the Jonin squad, his blade flashing in rapid strikes as he killed them first. A couple of trees fell against their brethren as Kushina and Minato leapt clear, and then the red Headed swordswoman rushed Naruto, her own blade flashing towards him as he stopped using Gurata Seishin-ken and let their blades clash. His next 2 strikes killed 4 more men before he stepped back to avoid one of the Jonin's hurried slashes with a kunai. He felt his father leaping at him as he held her, and he simply dropped into a crouch, causing Kushina to lose his balance and knock him over. He then rolled forward to avoid any possible counterattack, but as he turned around, he saw the Hiraishin kunai coming at him. He blocked it upwards and made his own Rasengan in a free hand as his father appeared above him and tried to use the element of surprise to blindside his son. Minato flew into the air as the 2 attacks collided, creating a crater beneath Naruto. He then vanished in another yellow flash and reappeared at a kunai he had dropped close to Naruto, swinging the second blade at the blonde, who deflected it with a swift blow from his blade before taking a step back and blocking Kushina's attack with the same motion. He moved around her and struck, causing their blades to flicker in a pattern that would be too lethal for anyone to approach. Or anyone who wasn't a Hiraishin master, as Minato used dozens of kunai to flash close and launch a sneak attack on the fighters. Naruto saw it coming each time and was able to block it as his complex battle with his mother went on. Neither had been able to hit the other, but it wasn't because Kushina didn't try. She could tell Naruto was teasing her because of his easygoing grin, which remained on his face even as Minato attempted to outmaneuver him with his hit dot and dot run strategy. Naruto took a step to the side, saw the flicker before it was too late, and kicked Minato in the chest as he appeared. The man grinned as he teleported again, and used the moment when Naruto was confused by the abrupt change to slam a fist into his chest and attempt to apply the Hiraishin seal to him. However, the fist that connected to the side of his head was anything but. Minato was shocked to see Naruto smiling and asked, "How? You can thank my dearly departed benefactor Tobi." Naruto replied as he revealed that the Sharingan eye was spinning inside of his socket. "He took me from Konoha and made me into what I am today. He trained me, gave me every single tool that I now have, and to ensure that my plans would succeed I took his eye and have spent the last few years ensuring that I have mastered it to a greater degree than he ever did. Your little seal trick won't work on me like it did him all those years ago." Recalling vividly the masked man who had almost killed Kushina and his baby children that evening, Minato's eyes widened in shock at this new information. He had no idea what had happened to that man in the mask, but based on what he's heard now, it appears that he had stayed close enough and waited long enough to take one of his kids and use him as a weapon to destroy his own family. Minato said, "Naruto. First. Save it." With a fading smile, Naruto said, "I am here on my own power, not under some orders given to me by a dead man, or one that should be dead. I am here to realize my own plans." As he vanished from view, Naruto slammed the hilt of the aka Rippa into Minato's face before kicking him across the clearing and slamming him into one of the fallen trees. Kushina then moved back in, and the two resumed their deadly dance, but now Naruto was beginning to gain the upper hand, occasionally allowing her blade to pass through him to inflict a minor wound against her that he would have normally had to deflect with his blade. When his senses told him that Minato was going to attack, Naruto pushed her back with a few minor wounds and leapt backwards. He did so from above, trying to send several kunai down into him, but when that didn't work, he realized that the goal had been to get him to dodge because he was between several kunai and his father had Kage Bunshin assisting him with a Rasengan. "But I can't let your ambition continue," Minato said, flashing from sight and alternating between each kunai repeatedly until Naruto wasn't sure which way the attack was coming from. Then, he appeared on his right side and thrust the yellow Rasengan at the black-eyed blonde. "I never thought I would be using this against you, Naruto." Minato yelled, "Raiden! Rasengan!" as he slammed the Electifrid Rasengan into Naruto, who blinked in shock at the impact and felt that his nervous system wasn't functioning correctly because his right leg had failed when he attempted to move his left arm to steady himself. Now that his mother had attempted to follow up and discovered that her blows were going straight through him, he scowled and used all of his intangibility. "Impressive. I hadn't realized that you had managed to add an elemental release to it yet," said Naruto. "I've had years to tinker with it. I'm more curious as to how you learned the Rasengan," replied Minato. "Jiraiya, of course. He saw through the Yami disguise right away, though not even he knows the full truth. He taught it to me during the Chunin exams. Once he told me of your plans to add an elemental release to it, it was child's play to do it myself. But then again, after what Orochimaru did for me, I find most things to be exceptionally easy," replied Naruto. Already frightened of the response, Kushina whispered, "What did he do to you?" Now, as he began to rise, Naruto laughed, "He gave me power. He unlocked my hidden potential and gave me so many useful skills that I am already a deadly shinobi by the time I was 8 years old. Now I am a walking army and capable of fighting off the Hokage and his wife at the same time. And after having defeated the Raikage before that, His laughter grew as he flickered forward, slamming his blade into Kunshina, sending her skidding backwards, then turning and stabbing aka Rippa into the ground while using both hands to begin creating a new Rasengan, this one taking the shape of a green pinwheel as he held it over his head. As he sent the ninjutsu flying at Minato, who blinked in shock at the attack before Hiri shining away and appearing near the edge of the slowly expanding clearing, Naruto laughed and said, "Enjoy this, father, I have ascended beyond you once again." Futon. Rasen Shuriken. Minato watched as the attack decimated the surrounding trees before falling into little better than tinder. Naruto grasped aka Rippa and made tiny circles with the tip while glancing left and right at his parents, who both appeared exhausted and displayed the first signs of fear. This sight alone made Naruto happier than anything else as he considered who he should attack first. He debated whether to kill his father and let a more fun Kenjutsu duel continue, or to end his mother's life first and concentrate all of his attention on his father and his meddling Hiraishin. While Kushina hurried in and attempted to strike at the soon-to-be disarmed side, Hiraishin struck next to him once more before he could make up his mind, trying to swiftly disarm Naruto. Noting that Kushina had stopped her strike just short of impaling her husband, Naruto smiled as he let him disarm him and then let the intangibility take over. He then slammed his left hand into her stunned face, grabbed aka Rippa, and moved aside. Naruto laughed and said, "By now you should realize that you can't beat me." "We have to." "You won't listen to reason," Minato replied. "This is called tough love." "Like you would know how to show me love." Naruto grumbled. "You barely even knew I existed. I was just a little blonde-haired shadow that lived in your home. You never cared about me, never took an interest in me. All you cared about was your Jinchuruki daughter and how she would change the world. Well, guess what? She'll be nothing more than a side note in history, the sister to the emperor that died in his rise to power." The realization that he did intend to kill Narakoa and probably them as well made Minato and Kushina's eyes widen. Minato muttered, "We failed you, Naruto, and we are sorry. But we can't let you do this. We can't let you kill your sister and all of those innocent people out there," Kushina went on. Naruto yelled, "You're sorry? Ha, you're only sorry because I'm a threat. No, we have been looking for you for years, and we never gave up hope that you would return home," Kushina said, shaking her head. "Liar." Naruto yelled once more, "It took you almost a day to realize I was gone. If you had really cared you would have noticed I was gone within the hour. You could have stopped me from crossing the border long before Tobi and I got there. You chose to ignore my absence because it had nothing to do with Naruto. Well, guess what? All that is going to happen is your fault. And now I am going to break you both, and leave you alive long enough to see the new world I am going to build. Maybe I'll even let you live long enough for old age to claim you, long enough to see everything that you know and love die before your eyes." In order to keep Naruto off balance as he dropped aka Rippa and pushed him farther away from it, Minato struck him with a kunai before Naruto could continue his monologue. Naruto deflected the blow, saw his father Hiraishin in, and slammed a fist into his stomach, knocking him back a step. Naruto was able to counter and knock Minato back across the clearing after a few moments of this. He then realized that Minato was the distraction because Kushina had grabbed aka Rippa, and a red coating of chakra appeared around her, causing a smile to spread across her face. As she vanished from view, she brought her sword to Naruto, who saw that, in spite of her prior prowess, she was something even more when she held aka Rippa. He was fazed by her strike, but the Kyuubi's chakra remnants she was using gave it a windstream that threw him off balance. He stepped back a little, and the smile that had been on his face for the majority of the fight vanished, leaving only a frown. He knew that if he allowed her to keep pressing him in this way, things would get more complicated. Kushina jumped forward, bringing aka Rippa up against a guard. Naruto simply rolled past her, grabbed the abandoned katana she had been using, and remarked that this weapon was in fact inferior to aka Rippa as he struck with a slash that Kushina easily and scornfully blocked, causing the blade to shake. When Minato returned to the fight and discovered that, although Naruto was still very dangerous, the change in weapon had thrown him off a few beats and left a small opening that the two more seasoned shinobi planned to take advantage of, Naruto understood that he would need to start taking things seriously if he wanted to defeat them. He blocked each blow and countered in turn. As Kushina moved past her husband's strikes to keep Naruto on guard and on the defensive, Minato lashed out in a twin kunai style, pushing him back step by step. Even when he went intangible, the two of them never slowed or stopped, keeping the black-eyed youth on the defensive until he felt the blade in his hands shake one last time before his mother's next strike came with a loud, crystal-clear shattering noise from the power of her Biju-enhanced strike. As he sidestepped one of Minato's slashes, Naruto said, "It seems that I underestimated you. If I had known that having aka Rippa would have given you such an edge, I would have taken better care to keep it out of your grasp. As Naruto phased through another blow, Kushina remarked, "You may have been able to use it extraordinarily well, but this blade knows who its partner is." Naruto sneered, "Partner." He was able to leave the battle by phasing through them in a flash of movement, landing in a crouch as he tossed aside the broken blade and looked at it, saying, "It's a weapon, nothing more. This is the true power of aka Rippa, it's Kai no Nikimushi, Blood Whale." Kushina rushed forward, bringing the blade against Naruto in a flash that he could not have followed if not for his heightened senses and his Sharingan eye. Naruto managed to lean back to avoid the initial slash, then blinked in shock as he felt the slash go across his chest and felt a spike of fear hit him because he had no idea what had happened. "This is why you can't do this," Kushina said, as the Kyuubi chakra covered the blade and the metal started to emit an unearthly wail. As he backpedaled and attempted to devise a strategy to counter this new ability, Minato appeared after Kushina had managed to push him into a group of Hiraishin Kunai. The Hokage then delivered vicious blows to his son, who quickly realized that this battle was turning against him and that his parents were indeed getting their second wind. He had attempted to phase through the slashes, but the strikes were too fast for him to do so accurately, and a collection of wounds began to appear on him. He began to laugh at that point. As Naruto started to laugh hysterically before gathering himself, Minato and Kushina both blinked, and his smile was twisted with hatred and madness. "Oh, how I have longed for this. I always thought that pain would be the only real challenge to my ambitions, but you have proved me wrong." A bewildered Minato blinked. "Pain? The leader of AIM? I haven't felt this rush in so long, the rush of fighting for my life." Naruto kept on chuckling. "The rush of knowing that I could die, that not everything is within my control. I enjoy these moments more than anything, especially when I still manage to triumph." He turned to face Minato, who appeared stunned as Naruto held up his right hand and started creating a brand new kind of Rasengan. His smile widened and he let Kushina's blow pass through him as his hand caught her arm. Although the chakra coating burned him, he only laughed louder as he snapped her forearm and made her drop aka Rippa. He then slammed his forehead into her face a few times before kicking her away. "Do try and survive. I haven't tested this one yet and would love to know the longer lasting effects that it should have." Naruto's right hand formed a claw-like shape, and a slightly smaller than normal Rasengan appeared over his palm. Over each finger, another Rasengan appeared, each one about the size of a marble and each one representing one of the 5 elements. "Saza Rasengan, Creation Rasengan," Naruto said as he appeared in front of the kunai that his Sharingan had shown him that Minato would appear a second before he did. He slammed the attack home to Minato's agonized shout as the attack tore into his stomach, sending him flying backwards as the 6 spheres bore into him and the conflicting elements tore into him. As Minato fell to the ground in a heap a short distance away, Naruto's insane joy subsided as he turned his attention to the task at hand and gazed at his parents' vanquished forms. He knew better than to leave them alive, even though he was tempted to do so for a variety of reasons. He grabbed his father's barely conscious form and threw him into the slowly rising Kushina, who caught him with a wince, the Kyuubi chakra gone but the wounds still there. "It's over," calmly replied Naruto as he drew aka more and began to walk toward them. "You could try and draw on what little scraps of the Kyuubi's chakra remain in your body, but we both know that if you draw on any more of it you will die, and Naruto isn't around to give you a transfusion and our dear Hokage is in no condition to even stand, let alone Hiraishin you out of this situation. I'm afraid that this is the end of the line for you both." Kushina started, but all she could see was the icy gleam of resolve as he stood over them, blade raised to take their lives. "No, Naruto." He only said, "Goodbye, mother," before lowering the blade, and was flung across the clearing after being caught by the back of the neck by an iron grip. Naruto looked up, blinking in disbelief, to see Jiraiya standing between him and his defeated parents, his face displaying anger. Naruto had to hide his astonished expression as he gazed at Jiraiya, who was standing across from him with such a fierce expression that Naruto knew he would probably be dead right there if appearances could kill. "Well, this is a surprise. I wasn't expecting you to join the party so early, Jiraiya." Naruto chuckled. "But all you've done is hasten your own end." Since he didn't think Naruto would attack at the first opportunity, Jiraiya calmly said, "Not likely. Kushina, get Minato out of here." She said, "Jiraiya, first." "No now." Jiraiya responded with determination. "I'll keep Naruto here, but you need to get out of here before things get any worse." Unaware of the shape that counter would take, Naruto laughed as he whirled aka Rippa in a tiny circle and hurled himself forward to eliminate his 2 parents. He planned to phase right through Jiraiya's attempt at a counter. Doden. Yomi Numa. Swamp of the Underworld. Jiraiya yelled as the ground beneath Naruto transformed into a huge swamp, stopping him as he stumbled. Unexpectedly, Kushina was able to pick up Minato and begin to head for the shore while Jiraiya bit into his thumb and flashed through the hand signs required for his follow. Up technique. Kachiyose no Jutsu. Summoning technique. In a cloud of smoke, two smaller toads immediately jumped onto Jiraiya's shoulders. The male one said, "Well, Jiraiya boy, what's going on here?" The other frowned and said, "Is that Minato's son?" Jiraiya said, "Yeah. We need to stop him." With an understanding nod, the woman said, "All right, let's use it then." When Naruto finally got himself out of the muck, he asked, "Just what are you planning, old man?" As his eyes closed and his face changed, Jiraiya said, "I'm about to put you down." His nose became bulbous and had warts on it, and a goatee appeared out of nowhere. When he opened his eyes had also changed to more closely resemble a toad. Naruto asked, "Mentally going over his options, and making yourself uglier has what to do with it?" Since he was unaware of what the Sannin had just done, he knew that abandoning Jiraiya would be a grave mistake. He knew that he could no longer use his more potent techniques because he was only using about 30% of his chakra. He could still use the Sharingan to phase, but the more he used Ida, especially if he had to use full body ones to avoid whatever Jiraiya had done to Hima, the more chakra he would be depleting. The sharpened point. Like teeth that were now filling Jiraiya's mouth were exposed as he said, "There's no point in telling you. I'm going to put you down right here." Naruto wanted to laugh at this, but Jiraiya was already in motion before he could even comprehend it, and the Sharingan was the only thing that prevented him from taking a direct hit. He leapt back, avoiding the first blow, but his eyes widened in surprise when he felt a blow catch him and send him back a few steps. Jiraiya quickly took advantage of this and moved in to press the attack. To Naruto's surprise, Jiraiya had created two Rasengans that struck with overwhelming force, sending the blonde flying into some of the wreckage from his battle with his parents. Still, Naruto phased through a strike but was pushed back by the force of the blow. He also threw off his counter as his swing was blocked by the male toad on Jiraiya's right shoulder, which held it in place. As he stood up, fear starting to seep into his thoughts, Naruto exclaimed, "What? What the hell? How are you doing this?" he asked. Jiraiya said, "I told you, it doesn't matter. He's able to phase out of reality." The female toad said, "But he has to leave a piece of himself here as an anchor, otherwise he would likely completely enter that other reality." When the toad summarized the power that the Sharingan had bestowed upon him, Naruto's eyes widened in surprise. The other toad observed, "He's got sharp reflexes, and that swing would have gone right through you if I hadn't stopped it." He glanced at the blade for a moment before giving it to Jiraiya, who stabbed it into the ground, saying, "He's dangerous. If we don't kill him quickly we might regret it." "Hey. It's a cheap trick but one that he uses quite well." "I know." Jiraiya replied calmly, "He's no longer Minato's son. He's an enemy that needs to be stopped once and for all." Naruto laughed and cracked his knuckles, saying, "And you think you can do it? You are not nearly strong enough to put me down. I will reshape this world into one without war, Jiraiya." The old hermit only said, "No," as he struck again, moving into Naruto's space and slamming his fist into the blonde who blocked the blow and shocked Jiraiya by slamming his forehead into Jiraiya's face. The unexpected pain caused him to lose his balance for a moment, but Jiraiya's hand caught his fist and gripped it with bone, shattering strength, causing Naruto to gasp in pain before a kick struck his chest, knocking him to the ground where Jiraiya was already creating another Rasengan, this one much larger. Naruto stepped out of reality and into the Kamui dimension as he slammed the giant sphere into the ground. There, he picked up one of the emergency soldier pills he had left behind. Soldier pills only restored a small amount of chakra, hardly even 5% of his total strength, which was the only drawback of what Orochimaru had done for him. However, Naruto only needed that small percentage to execute his counter. Naruto swiftly swallowed it and went back to the clearing, where Jiraiya gazed at him for a while before cursing. "He must have had supplies in that other dimension," said the female toad. "He restored some of his own chakra." The other said, "Which means he's back in fighting shape." Looking at Naruto with the icy, calculating eyes of a Sannin, Jiraiya said, "No, he isn't. He restored some of his chakra but he's on his last legs." "How very astute, Jiraiya." Naruto smiled. "I've been using a great deal of power today and I was not expecting to have to face off against 4 S-rank shinobi back to back. But once you are out of the way I can make sure that the rest of the Raikage's forces are dealt with and then take a nice rest before setting the rest of the world right." He blinked when the male toad finished making hand signs and sent a blast of wind towards him, just as Jiraiya had just finished his own. Naruto was in front of Jiraiya again, and he kicked him in the chest to knock him back a step before striking again. He jumped back from the female toad's tongue as it lashed out where he had been. Jiraiya said, Kaden. Dai Enden, big flame bullet, as the jet of fire shot toward Naruto, the wind intensifying the flame's size and ferocity. Doden. Doria, Ya Heki, Earth-style rampart, Naruto flashed through his own hand signs as he slammed his hands onto the ground with a smile. The ground rose up beneath his feet as he was lifted above the fire and began the next set of hand signs, Futon. Kami Oroshi, Divine Mountain Wind. Naruto exhaled massively, turning the flames so that the wind now carried them towards Jiraiya and the two toads. Naruto was standing there, waiting to see where he would next appear, and getting ready to swiftly kill the old hermit when he heard a croaking sound. He was momentarily perplexed as he tried to locate the source, already assuming it was something from the two toads. He felt his senses change as he leapt down and began to approach, and he recognized that this was a genjutsu, a strong one at that, since he could typically power through them with little effort. Naruto jumped forward in an attempt to reach the two toads, but he fell straight into the genjutsu and ended up trapped inside a water cube that was being supported by 4 large toads. Jiraiya sighed when he noticed Naruto halting in his tracks, just a few feet from the hiding place where Jiraiya, Fukasaku, and Shima had been. Jiraiya moved toward him, ready to kill Naruto while he was still disabled, but he sensed the impending attack and jumped back, only to discover 3 figures now standing between him and the disabled Naruto. One was obviously Sasuke, who was obviously worn down and had a number of injuries on his body from the fighting that had taken place. The second was Fu, who had a fierce frown on her face and appeared prepared for battle. The final one was a short figure that Jiraiya thought might be Yagura, wearing a turtle mask on his face and a black cloak. That's enough. Yagura replied, Kumo has already been bested and in full retreat. You are the last enemy combatant on this island. It will not be long before the rest of our forces arrive and kill you. Take this chance to leave here now while you still can. And what makes you think that I would accept that offer? Jiraiya responded. Because we both know the value of information. The more senior Jinchuruki replied. You have gleaned much about us from this battle and your own observations, and in the end you have revealed just as much about yourself by doing so. Let us call this a draw and face one another again another day. Jiraiya looked at the 3 people in front of him and realized that although he was strong, Yagura was also a Jinchuruki and a cage-level shinobi. Jiraiya wasn't sure he could ultimately kill Naruto, even if it meant losing his own life, so he added Fu, Sasuke, and Jiraiya. Jiraiya calmly said, but you should know that the next time we fight, I will kill him. I can't allow a threat to Konoha exist like that. He took a step back and stopped using his senjutsu, allowing Fukasaku and Shima to separate from him and return to Mount Myoboku. Fine. The genjutsu will be released once I have left the island. You may attempt to do whatever you wish. Yagura laughed. But in the end it will mean nothing. This world will be reborn in fire, and once it is complete the cycle of violence will have ended once and for all. Jiraiya was reverse summoned back to Mount Myoboku, and as he vanished, the genjutsu that was holding Naruto also ended, causing the blonde to fall to his knees. His killer intent increased until only Yagura remained upright. Where is he? Screamed Naruto. He has left. It was ill-advised to continue to battle him when we knew so little about his abilities, not when your life was on the line. The plan hinges on you. I don't care about that. I want his head, an enraged Naruto yelled. Yagura calmly said, and you will have it, once you have suitably recovered. Naruto glared at the shorter man before making his way to his palace as the killer intent vanished. Back in Konoha, Minato and Kushina were lying in the hospital after Tsunade had promptly attended to their injuries and Naruto had been called in to administer another Kyuubi chakra transfusion to Kushina. Kakashi was escorted out, and Tsunade and Jiraiya joined her in the room as they talked about the most recent development. Tsunade sighed, to think that Naruto was behind it all along. Which raises the question of why he was in Tanzuka-gai, says Kakashi. Jiraiya sighed and remarked, but we were lucky. I can already guess, and it will be handled quietly. Minato cried out, lucky? He's a madman that intends to plunge the world into chaos. Jiraiya frowned and remarked, he is. But we learned a great deal more about him from it, and from there we might, and I stress the word might, have a chance to stop him. Tsunade inquired, what are you thinking? Naruto's done hiding in the shadows. He's ready to go to war and has already amassed a powerful army, while crippling those he deemed the largest threats to him, Mainlius and Kumo. But he took to the field himself for this battle. He doesn't fully trust those working for him and we might be able to use that against him. Also we learned a great deal about his abilities and what he can do in a fight. That phasing ability he has is dangerous but not unstoppable. I was able to counter him with senjutsu, but he adapted quickly to the unknown as well. And judging from how he reacted, I think he might have gotten a Sharingan of his own. He does. Minato nodded. He said that he took it from the man that helped him run away. The same man that was responsible for unleashing the Kyuubi. All right. Jiraiya hummed, this could be a surprise benefit. Tsunade raised an eyebrow and said, care to share with the rest of us? The phasing comes from a Sharingan, and the Uchiha were meticulous in their record-keeping of the various offshoots of the Sharingan, particularly the various forms that the Mangekyo Sharingan could take. If we can figure out whose eye it is that Naruto has, we might find out more about that ability of his and locate a weakness to it. Jiraiya clarified, but that won't change a great deal. He's powerful in just about every sense of the word. He was on his last legs while fighting me, and he was still able to go toe-to-toe with me in Sage mode. If I had fought him when he was at his full strength, I would have died, no questions asked. The next time we fight him, we need to have multiple S-class nin going against him, at least 5 of them. Kakashi questioned, that would stop him, but what about his army? That is a whole other problem. Jiraiya replied, he has at least 3 Jinchuruki, and they are all fully trained. Not to mention he has all of Mizu under his command now, and he won't be resting on his successful defense for too long. He's going to launch his own offensive, and soon. Quietly, Kushina inquired, where? Kumo. Kakashi laughed. He had Mei lure them into that trap. His plan was clearly to cripple them before launching his own counterattack there, and it's a good place to do it. If he can get his hooks into Kaminari no Kuni, then he has a very defensible position to work from and begin the work of conquering the rest of the nations. Okay. Send word to Kumo and tell them all of this, as well as giving them all of the information that we have on them. Minato responded with determination. Also, we need to get in touch with the leader of AIM. Jiraiya nodded and said, Nagato. Why? Because Naruto is going to be going after him as well. If we stay divided, he will pick us off one at a time. We need a unified front against him. Minato responded, will he listen? Maybe. I'll try and get in touch with him and see if he is willing to talk, but he isn't the same young kid I trained. No telling how he'll react, warned Jiraiya. Kushina concurred, saying, if nothing else, he will know that Naruto is on the warpath. Sasuke and Yagura were standing close to the table in the war room when Naruto sat down and asked, so what happened? Kumo retreated. They lost 2/3 of their forces here. Unfortunately, the more powerful enemies managed to get away, Sasuke said. With his eyes blazing into Sasuke's, Naruto whispered, what? How? It turns out that Killer Bee was here as well. From what we managed to overhear, he snuck out and followed after the Raikage because he was worried about him. He emerged from the ocean and hit Han with a Bijudama before he could react. Once they had a way out, ordered a full retreat, with all remaining forces latching onto the fully transformed Jinchuruki. Sasuke kept going. We inflicted a heavy toll, and while A and both Jinchuruki escaped, we did kill one of the Raikage's personal guard by the name of C and inflicted serious injuries on Darui. The Raikage was already badly wounded by you and only survived due to him getting his second wind once you were taken away. He avoided extended confrontation at that point and mainly focused on hit-and-run tactics. I am more concerned about you. Yagura replied, you were taken quite unexpectedly and from what we managed to gather fought against several Konoha shinobi, your parents and Jiraiya. I survived. But it was one interruption after another today. Both Minato and Kushina managed to escape thanks to Jiraiya's intervention. How did he manage to sneak onto the island? There are a multitude of means that he could have used. He is an exceptionally skilled shinobi, and the fact that you survived that battle. I should have had him, an enraged Naruto yelled. Perhaps, but that is irrelevant at this moment. Yagura replied, the question is now what? Naruto stared at the map and was silent for a moment before he spoke. As much as I want to go and launch a full-scale invasion of Hai no Kuni, allowing Kumo to recover their footing will only hinder us. We stick to the plan and go and finish what was started today. Sasuke and Yagura nodded as Naruto said, have our forces ready to move out tonight. I intend for us to reach Kaminari no Kuni by dawn. We aren't going to give them a chance. While Sasuke stood there, Yagura nodded and left to gather their armies. Understood. Naruto questioned, something to say? Yes, actually. Sasuke replied, we are taking a huge gamble on this war, and if we lose then everything that you have done will be for nothing. And what is your point? You can't keep risking yourself on the front lines. You are the pillar that is keeping this entire empire standing. If we lose you before it is fully established, then it is going to come tumbling down. Are you telling me to cease fighting? I am telling you to be smarter than you've been acting. You have few blind spots, but the ones that you do have are blinding, and your family is one. I've watched you predict and manipulate events for years now, and I know that you are not one to be caught flat-footed. but Minato got the best of you, and then Jiraiya had you at his mercy when we showed up. Sasuke yelled, as Naruto's, "You may not like what I have to say, but you chose me to be your general and I will be, which means that I am going to call you on your idiocy when it happens." After giving Sasuke a long look, Naruto said, "You know who we are going to be up against. I do not intend to sit in the rear and watch as the fighting rages. If you have a problem with that, then keep it to yourself." "You know I won't," Sasuke replied. "You brought me into this, and I intend to make sure that it succeeds." After the Uchiha left the room, Naruto glared at his back. When the door closed behind him, his fist struck the table, breaking it like a toy for kids. "I'll kill him. By the time I'm through with him, he will wish I had killed him here." The small group sat in silence in the Raikage's office, all but one of them bandaged and injured. "Normally I'd be furious at you, B," A then replied. "But you saved our lives back there, along with a number of our shinobi." "But bro, that was still bad." B nodded, totally focused on the task at hand. "You know that I've got ya back." As he touched his ribs, where he had almost been pierced through the lungs, Darui moaned, understatement. "We were played hard. If you hadn't managed to drop that kunai that the Hokage had given you, you'd be dead, Raikage, Sama." He sighed and turned to face a bandaged Yugito. "I know. How are you holding up, Yugito?" he asked. "I'll live. But the Jinchuruki of the Gobi is no slouch. And we didn't even see the Sanbi or the Nanabi." Yugito replied, "If B and I fight together, we could probably take one or two of them, but if all three are as good as Han, then we are in trouble." "True. Alright, I was too focused on our escape to take note of too many details, so let's hear it. How bad are things?" I inquired. "We lost nearly half of our combat-ready shinobi, and all of those among the lost are those that excelled at naval combat. The ones that returned with us have sustained varying levels of injuries and are being treated as we speak. We lost C on the shores of Uzu, and he made up a decent portion of our fighting power. As you should well know, Yugito sustained moderate injuries, but she is still fit for duty as my killer B at the moment is our strongest asset, so we are going to need to use that wisely." Darui continued. I nodded and said, "It's as bad as I thought then." "It's probably worse." Darui continued. "It's safe to assume that their army is going to be coming here first. They already weakened us, and the smartest move on their part would be to kill us quickly before moving forward to whatever else they have planned." "You think that they will?" B responded. "They seemed more interested in playing defense. They wanted us to throw the first punch." I responded, "So that way they could counter us with a strike that should have killed us to a man. We managed to get out of it, but we aren't safe yet." "I agree with Darui. They're coming here next. We need to be ready. Mabui." The secretary entered the room and nodded. "Yes, Raikage, Sama. Issue a general alert to all of our forces. Recall all remaining shinobi and give the order to prepare our defenses." I continued before stopping. "And order a full evacuation of all non-combatants." "Raikage. Sama?" the woman exclaimed, blinking in surprise. As he stood looking out the window, I said, "Do it. I don't intend to let this village fall, but if things are as bad as I think they are, I don't want those that cannot fight to be caught in the crossfire." She nodded and turned to go, saying, "Understood." Yugito said, "Are you sure about this? It could cause a panic." I said firmly, keeping his trembling fist in front of him out of sight of his subordinates, I am the Raikage. My first priority is to protect my village and my people. I will not allow them to be trapped here when that madman comes to finish what he started. We will be ready though. No matter what happens, we will be ready."
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.